Chapter 4490. Indistinctly, she could hear a deep groan coming from the front, as though it was enduring a huge pain. In the quiet and spacious cave, an extremely soft echo was heard. Yi Qingluo's approach didn't attract the attention of the people inside. She was nearing the direction of the sound. The nearer she got, the more Yi Qingluo could feel the dense evil qi in the air, until the front was no longer a winding passageway, but a spacious cave. The densely packed bloody bones were attached to the steep stone walls like a spiderweb. Yi Qingluo didn't get any nearer. She had crossed hands with the blood-bone barbaric king previously, so she was very clear. Once she touched the blood bones, she would be discovered by the blood-bone barbaric king. She sized up the densely packed blood bones in front of her, searching for the blood-bone barbaric king's head. The muffled groans of pain continued to ring out. Yi Qingluo followed the sound. Very quickly, she saw the blood-bone barbaric king's head in the densely packed blood-bone web. The blood-bone barbaric king still looked so young. His handsome face was constantly contorted as he suffered great pain. The air was filled with the stench of blood. Yi Qingluo discovered the blood bones which had appeared on the battlefield and absorbed the corpses on the battlefield were making a cracking sound as they merged with the blood bones in the cave. Each of the blood bones were stained with sticky blood or flesh, intertwining and merging with each other. The entire space was filled with the cracking sound of bones colliding or breaking, which was extremely horrifying. And following this sound, the blood-bone barbaric king's groan and pain became even more intense. Nobody knew how much time had passed. Only then did that painful groan slowly stop. The blood-bone barbaric king's heavy panting sound was extremely clear. Sweat dripped down from his forehead. Bone 1. The blood-bone barbaric king panted heavily. Very quickly, a figure appeared out of thin air among the densely packed blood bones. How is it? Blood-bone barbaric king asked. Bone 1 cupped his fists. It's done, everything is fine now. The blood-bone barbaric king heaved a sigh of relief as he slowly closed his eyes. His mood also relaxed a lot. Gui pursed his lips tightly. His cold face was full of confusion. Bone Lord, I have something to say. The barbaric blood-bone king did not open his eyes. I know what you want to say. There's no need to say more. I really don't understand why the Bone Lord had to use such a method. Bone 1 said stubbornly. The Bone Lord clearly knows that she won't be grateful to you. And she doesn't know how much pain you've suffered because of her. You've placed yourself in opposition to her. Shut up. The barbaric blood-bone king suddenly opened his eyes, which were filled with rage. Gui knelt down abruptly. This subordinate was just feeling injustice for Bone Lord. Everything Bone Lord did was for her, but she wanted to kill you. The blood-bone barbarian king's eyes were filled with coldness. Gui knelt there fearlessly. I really don't understand. The person who caused this situation is her. But now, you have to commit murder for the sake of the evil creature she created. Bang. Before Gui could finish his words, he was thrown out by a piece of blood bone. Yi Qingluo hurriedly turned sideways and shrunk into the darkness. Very quickly, a petite figure scuttled out from the darkness. The lady helped Gui up and said in a trembling voice, Bone Lord, please calm down. I'll bring Gui down now. End of this chapter. Chapter 4491. After the lady finished her words, she didn't help him down immediately. Silence for a moment. There was no response from the cave. The lady then hurriedly helped him up and left speedily. Perhaps the both of them were afraid that the blood-bone barbaric king would regret it, and only wanted to leave. No one noticed Yi Qingluo, who was hiding in the dark not too far away. When they passed by Yi Qingluo could vaguely hear the lady's suppressed reprimand. You know that Bone Lord loves her deeply, so why did you intentionally mention her in front of him? She doesn't appreciate it at all. Bone Lord's sacrifice is not worth it. Bone 1 felt heartache for his master's sacrifice. The lady continued. But Bone Lord feels that it's worth it. The both of them were still talking about something. But after a distance, Yi Qingluo couldn't hear it clearly. But what Yi Qingluo could confirm was the she they spoke of should be the woman named Feng Ge, who was dressed in a fiery red robe. Listening to their conversation, it seemed like the blood-bone barbaric king made use of the god's body as nourishment. All for That lady named Fengge? In the previous memory, wasn't it their West Continent's Three Springs city? Fengge was pregnant and about to get married to her beloved man? Why would she need the Bloodbone Barbaric King to use such a method to help her? Moreover, Fengge apparently didn't know that the Bloodbone Barbaric King was using such a method to help her. But because of the Bloodbone Barbaric King's change, it created a barrier between them, standing on opposite sides. Yi Qingluo was thinking. Suddenly, a bloodbone wrapped around her ankle. The icy cold sticky feeling instantly made Yi Qingluo's hair stand up. Her expression changed as she swiftly raised her head and looked at the cave. She saw a head, speedily following the bloodbone on the rock wall, sliding towards her. Yi Qingluo wanted to evade it, but the icy cold bloodbone beneath her feet was sucking her hard, making her unable to move at all. He could only look on helplessly as the head quickly rushed towards his face, the head, gradually enlarged in her pupils. It was as if he wanted to take over her body. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered furiously as her body moved even more vigorously. Her fingertips held the glower flame fan, and the rolling profound rays swiftly chopped downwards. Rumble. Suddenly the ground caved in. Yi Qingluo only felt an earthquake. There seemed to be something distorting the entire space. Immediately following that, Yi Qingluo was in the distorted space and her vision turned blurry as it sunk into darkness. After what seemed like several breaths of time, Yi Qingluo abruptly opened her eyes. The feeling of being bound disappeared just like that. At this moment, she was standing on a battlefield littered with corpses. The thick stench of blood and the surrounding Xian ripples were like monstrous waves, constantly surging. Yi Qingluo glanced around. He looked at his hands and feet again. Did this change the scene again? Was it just an illusion that the barbaric Bloodbone King had discovered her existence? Yi Qingluo's complexion turned slightly pale. Fengge, are we really going to end up like this? A voice came from not far away. It was the barbaric Bloodbone King. When Yi Qingluo heard his voice, she recalled the feeling of being entangled to her ankles by the bloodbone in the cave earlier. She shuddered, listening to the direction of the voice. The distance between her and the barbaric Bloodbone King wasn't too far. Cautiously, she moved her feet towards the direction of the sound. Update complete moi. End of this chapter. The fastest update speed. Hurry up and read it. Download address. Mobile phone reading. Chapter 4492. Indeed, after a few steps, just at the edge of the cliff, she saw two figures suspended in mid-air. Fengge and Bloodbone Barbaric King. The surrounding profound waves surged like a surging huge wave. The sky was covered by an inky black profound energy, causing the surrounding atmosphere to become extremely oppressive. The atmosphere between the two was no longer as gentle as the first time Yi Qingluo saw it, but it was encircled by a layer of thick, austere aura. When the two of them looked at each other, there was an eerie chill. Agu, you're my most important friend. The lady's voice was filled with pain. Her fingers which were holding onto the long sword turned white. Why? Why do we have to come to such a stage? I'm out on something today. I'll come back to write the script. I'll take a day off first, adding on to the 3 chapters 10 previously and the 3 chapters 10 today, plus the 1 chapter 10. I owe a total of 8 chapters. I'll make up for it in 2 days' time, moi. They were above thousands of people. What kind of woman couldn't he get? Why should he pity this broken shoe? The scene was in chaos. Huangfu Zhangdong looked at the distance between him and Bai Mei, as he stared furiously at Huangfu Sheng. Immediately after, he called for the Huangfu family's forces, as they speedily pounced towards Bai Mei's direction. That impatient action made Huangfu Sheng's lips twitch in disdain. Ah Sheng. Gu Zixi stretched out her arms, as she hugged his waist, as she raised her head, as she gazed deeply at Huangfu Sheng's face. Her lips curled upwards, as her smile was warm and gentle. I'll always be here. Huangfu Sheng's cold and stiff expression slowly softened. He gently caressed Gu Zixi hair as their eyes met. The cold air which was emitting from his body also gradually stopped. This scene fell into the eyes of the crowd not far away. Yi Qingluo's lips curled, as she looked behind her with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Your little cousin has a good life. To meet a good lady, you don't need to worry. Who's worried about him? Xiao Jin snorted coldly. Yi Qingluo's gaze slid downwards as she looked at Yin Xiaoyi, who was standing beside Xiao Jin. Her gaze fell onto their interlocked fingers. Her lips curled into a gorgeous smile. You're also lucky to meet a good lady. They were talking and laughing. His gaze fell on their intertwined fingers. The corners of her lips curled up into a gorgeous smile. You're lucky to have met a good girl. They were talking and laughing. Yi Qingluo suddenly felt that the man beside her had some changes in his emotions. She glanced sideways at Diemo Xian. What's wrong? The man's expression was cold, and there was a hint of anger in his eyes. The girl turned to look at him. The look in his eyes had become gentle and unique to her. What's the matter? Yi Qingluo raised her hand and touched his face as she repeated that sentence. Diemo Xian lifted his hand. His purple robe fluttered like flowing clouds, and a wisp of white shadow could be vaguely seen swaying. Before Yi Qingluo had the chance to ask, Diemo Xian's expression revealed some unkind intentions. Pursing his thin lips, he bent down slowly and kissed her lips. Then he headed in the direction of the chaotic crowd. That was the direction of Bai Mei from the Palace of Darkness. There weren't many people from the Palace of Darkness who came this time round. The surrounding large powerhouses had long gone crazy over the so-called secret of the Divine Emperor's tomb. How could the Palace of Darkness's disciples stop them? It could be said that Bai Mei had been abused so badly that it was unbearable to watch. She was almost on her last breath. And on her body, there was nothing related to the Divine Emperor's tomb. Chapter 4493. Fengge, since you've already chosen to capture me, then we're already enemies. The blood-bone barbarian monarch smiled evilly. He raised his hand and caressed his lips, as if he wanted to continue. Fengge gripped her longsword tightly. Her pair of enchanting eyes overflowed with coldness. But because of the person in front of her, she forcibly suppressed the anger in her heart. As long as you give me a reasonable explanation, I will take responsibility for this matter. Feng Ji's voice was almost squeezed out from between her teeth. This was obviously her last concession. The blood-bone barbarian monarch's evil smile stiffened. His pitch-black eyes were filled with complicated emotions. Fleeting. He laughed. His laughter was loud, but it seemed to be concealing some kind of emotion in his heart. Take responsibility for me? Tell me, you were the one who killed those people? Or are you going to become the mastermind behind me? The blood-bone barbarian monarch laughed in a low voice. His laughter was full of mockery. Don't joke around. Who are you and who am I? Are you going to destroy your own future for me? He laughed and shook his head mockingly. No, impossible. The person you love is not me. You still have your child. How are you going to take responsibility for me? Under the man's mocking tone, the woman was actually unable to refute his words. She clenched her fists. You really don't want to tell me the real reason? How can I tell you without a reason? The blood-bone barbarian monarch snorted. Or do you want me to lie to you? The woman's delicate body suddenly tensed up. You mean, the rumors outside are all true? Is it really because you want to obtain eternal life and increase your own strength that you've cultivated a forbidden art? Use divine bodies as nourishment, and refine the flesh and blood of other profound practitioners from the God realm into your own power. Every word she said. Her tone became tenser. In the end, her entire mood was tense. The blood-bone barbarian monarch smiled. His expression was very indifferent. It's true. Agu. The woman screamed hysterically, tears seeping out from the corners of her eyes. You promised me that when I succeeded the throne, I would make you the barbaric blood-bone king, and that you would accompany me to protect everything. She was really hurt. Moreover, he was thoroughly injured. She had never doubted Agu, even if everyone was condemning Agu. But she firmly believed that everything Agu had done, he definitely had his own difficulties. However, Agu had personally shattered all of her beliefs. This was her brother, who was as close as a brother to her. He was someone she had given her true feelings to and treated as her own brother. But he admitted all of this with his own mouth. The barbaric blood-bone king's eyes changed when he saw her tears. But Fengge, right now, I am also invincible, barbaric blood-bone king. The barbaric Bloodbone King chuckled. However, the woman's appearance in the past appeared before his eyes. She smiled brightly and looked at him. From now on your title will be Barbaric Bloodbone King. Isn't it awesome? The scene of the past still seemed like it was yesterday. The barbaric Bloodbone King closed his eyes tightly, took a deep breath, and calmed his emotions. Then he maintained his evil smile and said word by word, "If you want to enforce justice on behalf of the heavens, I'm afraid you can't do it now." His gaze fell on the long sword in her hand. The corners of his mouth rose slightly, and there was a bit of coldness in his eyes. Chapter 4494. The chapter name is wrong, but the content is correct. The past memory. Wait till the day when you can really lay your hands on me. Then come and find me. Saying that, he turned around. The densely packed blood and bones quickly gathered and wrapped him up in layers. The crisp sound of bones echoed throughout the entire space. Following that, the figure of the barbaric Bloodbone King disappeared among the blood bones. The sky full of blood bones also merged into the air. The lady stood on the spot, staring blankly at the direction where the barbaric Bloodbone King disappeared. Her body seemed to have lost all support as it suddenly fell to the ground. The sharp crystal long sword also fell to the ground. She shut her eyes tightly. The expression on her face was an uncontrollable restlessness. Why did it become like this? Agoo. Why did he do that? I really don't want to get into this situation with him. The lady's murmur was very soft. But Yi Qing Luo, who was lying on the cliff, heard it clearly. Looking at the scene in front of her, Yi Qing Luo roughly understood this memory. It was no wonder that the people in the Gu residence were not allowed to mention the words Barbaric Bloodbone King. It turned out that Barbaric Bloodbone King was the title given to him by this lady named Feng Ge. In the end, the two of them became enemies. And because of this, Barbaric Bloodbone King did not want to mention these words again. She had to admit, there was actually a so-called friendship between men and women. At least for Feng Ge. She indeed sincerely treated the barbaric Bloodbone King as her own friend, and even a relative. Otherwise, she would not be in so much pain because of the barbaric Bloodbone King's actions. In the previous memory, Yi Qing Luo remembered that the barbaric Bloodbone King absorbed the nourishment from the god's body. It seemed to be for Feng Ge? What the F***ck? Could it be a sadomasochistic relationship? He did it for her. She was totally unaware, and had all sorts of misunderstandings. Then both of them went their separate ways. So sadistic. Yi Qing Luo broke out in cold sweat for the both of them. He wondered if Feng Ge would regret her decision to choose the man she loved deeply after she found out about this. Yi Qing Luo was thinking. Suddenly a figure appeared from not too far away. That person was tall and muscular. Not knowing if it was because they were too far apart, the light from this angle pierced her eyes. Yi Qing Luo couldn't see that person's face clearly. The man approached Feng Ge. Yi Qing Luo couldn't even see that person's face clearly. "Alright, don't be sad." It was a man's voice. It was gentle and extremely pleasant to listen to. "You are so sad. My heart aches." Huang. When the woman heard the man's voice, she threw herself into his arms. Yi Qing Luo was puzzled. She could clearly see the woman's face, but he couldn't see the man's face clearly. However, judging from the woman's actions and tone, it was obvious that she wasn't lying. That man should be the person she had chosen to love deeply. This is his own choice. He can't blame anyone else. The man comforted her gently. "Don't let your imagination run wild. You're still pregnant." Feng Ge wrapped her arms around his waist tightly, as if she had found a safe place to rest. She closed her eyes in peace. "To me, he's like an older brother. I don't want him to go astray because of me. Otherwise, I'll feel guilty for the rest of my life." "I know." The man lowered his head and kissed her hair. "He will understand your painstaking efforts. As long as he doesn't use the forbidden technique, the sovereign of God Emperor will not do anything to him." Huang. Feng Ge suddenly raised her head and looked at the man. Actually, the sovereign of God Emperor. Following Feng Ji's gaze upwards, Yi Qing Luo was also trying her best to see the man's face clearly. Chapter 4495. The chapter name is wrong, but the content is correct. Past memory at this moment. That familiar earth quaking and mountain shaking, as well as the distortion of space, struck her once again. Yiqing Luo. Motherf asterisk Ker. What a coincidence. Every critical moment, it would shift to the next space. Was it intentional? Was it because he didn't want her to discover the most important part of this memory? It was simply poisonous. No matter how Yiqing Luo ridiculed in her heart. This distorted space once again made her lose her gravity, causing her to blink out. When she opened her eyes again, as expected, the scene had shifted again. Yiqing Luo expressed that she was used to it and remained calm. She looked around in a daze. Now she was in an extremely secluded mountain peak. In front of her was a stretch of luxuriant foliage, thick and extremely horrifying plants. And not far ahead, there was a huge cave. Yiqing Luo walked over. But she didn't go near, because the surroundings of the cave were rippling with dense profound waves. One circle after another, like ripples spreading out. If she went near, she would suffer from this wave of energy attack. Yiqing Luo took a look and casually found a big tree. She chose a place that could withstand her weight and could easily conceal her figure. She had already figured out the routine. Anyway, to the memory of this space. Even if she didn't move, what was supposed to happen would definitely happen. All she had to do was wait here. As expected. About 2 hours later, a rustling sound was heard from the dense forest. Yiqing Luo shifted her body and looked towards the direction of the sound. She saw a lady dressed in a fiery red robe, rushing towards the cave. The profound waves agitated her red dress, and the veil on her face was also blown lightly. His aura was extremely cold and solemn, as though it was going to destroy the heaven and earth. When the lady rushed to the cave, she raised the long sword in her hand and waved it towards the cave. The profound waves surged, shaking the space. Some of the surrounding plants were uprooted by the profound waves. The place where Yiqing Luo was hiding was almost overturned. But at this timely moment, Kacha, a bloody bone slid out of the cave. Then countless bloody bones crawled out of the cave. When he realized that it was a woman, he felt a chill run down his spine. The bloodbone shrank back abruptly. After a while, the bloodbone barbarian king walked out of the cave. Yiqing Luo, who was in the dark. It seemed like the barbaric bloodbone king knew that his current form was extremely ugly. He didn't want to meet Feng Ge in an ugly appearance. Yiqing Luo's vision swept past Feng Ge. He did not know what the timeline of these memories was like. Feng Ge's stomach had already flattened. This meant that the child in her stomach had already been born. Moreover, she had finished her confinement. How long had it been since the 3 memory segments had happened? Yiqing Luo was really dumbfounded looking at this. Feng Ge, the bloodbone barbaric king, looked at the woman's face greedily, his eyes filled with longing. Why are you here? How long do you want to hide? The woman opened her mouth. Her voice was extremely cold. The bloodbone barbaric king lowered his eyes slightly, as he sighed softly. I have no choice. You guys are chasing too closely. If I don't hide, then I can only absorb all of them to become my nourishment. If I do this, you will not be happy. The woman raised the long sword in her hand, as she gave a cold laugh. Yes, I'm very unhappy, so I'm here on behalf of heaven. Chapter 4496. The bloodbone barbarian king was startled and looked at him in a daze. Suddenly he grinned and said, Is Feng Ge ready to kill me? The woman's eyes were cold. She did not respond. With a leap, he swept away the boundless profound light and swung his sword. She attacked without holding back. The killing intent in the profound light was not fake. The barbaric bloodbone king was stunned by her murderous aura. His smiling face finally couldn't help but freeze. He frowned slightly, and a puzzled expression floated in his eyes. Perhaps it was because he was stunned that he didn't dodge. Or was it because he didn't believe that Feng Ge would kill him? The barbaric bloodbone king did not dodge. He did not retaliate either. The long sword pierced straight through the bloodbone barbarian king's body, from one end of his shoulder to the other end of his body. The sharp pain made the barbaric bloodbone king's face turn deathly pale. He looked at Feng Gu in disbelief. His eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. Do you really think I can't bear to kill you? The woman's cold words were filled with coldness. Do you know that I've wanted to kill you since the moment a Huang appeared in my life? The Bloodbone Barbarian King was startled. The icy chill made him unable to think properly. The woman laughed mockingly. If a Huang hadn't told me that you were still useful, I would have killed you long ago. Don't you know that your self-righteous feelings for me not only annoys me, but also disgusts me? The last 3 words. The woman deliberately looked at the barbaric Bloodbone King's eyes, and said word by word. Those 3 words. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that exploded in the barbaric Bloodbone King's mind. The piercing pain in his shoulder. It was not even half as big as his heart. Looking at the astonished and incredulous expression on the man's face, the mocking look on the woman's face became even more pronounced. As if she was ridiculing the man's ignorance, she sneered. Agu, everyone says that you're a smart person, but in my eyes, you're as stupid as a pig. The woman laughed. Suddenly she moved her fingers. He pulled the sword out of the barbaric Bloodbone King's shoulder. Blood splattered everywhere. The barbaric Bloodbone King's body was also sent flying by the force of the sword. His body fell heavily to the ground. He groaned in pain. The sharp pain in his shoulder and the feeling of blood loss caused his mind to finally clear up. The woman raised her sword again and swung it at the barbaric Bloodbone King. This time, the barbaric Bloodbone King reacted. He quickly rolled on the ground and dodged the woman's attack. His face was gloomy. The bone-chilling coldness was eroding his body and mind. Even though he saw the woman's extremely cold face with his own eyes, he still could not believe it. Feng Gu, what are you talking about? The woman raised her voice and laughed loudly. Then she suddenly flew over. The sword in his hand had no intention of holding back at all. The piercingly cold sword wave swept up a dense killing intent. The barbaric Bloodbone King naturally felt the murderous aura from the woman. He dodged awkwardly. However, one of them was ruthless and determined to kill him. One of them was filled with shock, yet he was unwilling to retaliate. There was no suspense at all in this war. In just a short while, the Bloodbone Barbarian King was once again struck by the sword, and was pressed against the steep rock wall by the woman. The woman forcefully stepped on him to the ground. Pointing the sword at the barbaric Bloodbone King, she said, "You're useless, now you can die." Feng Gu. There was no fear of death in the barbaric Bloodbone King's eyes, but despair and pain towards the woman's coldness. Hurry up and read the latest update. Download URL. Chapter 4497. I'll tell you the truth. Actually, from the very beginning, I knew everything you did for me. Do you think that Huang approached me because of my identity? But Agu, I love him. If he really wants my life, I'm willing to give it to him. The pupils of the barbaric Bloodbone King contracted. The woman's words pierced his heart deeply. The woman looked at his pale face and smiled even more happily. Do you really think that I don't know that it's because of me that you're bearing the infamy of the world? No, actually, I know everything. I know everything. Because of my identity, the child in my womb is born with an imperial mandate. It will inherit everything I have, and even my identity. So, someone is secretly trying to take my life and my child's life while I'm pregnant, and my power is unstable. In order to protect me, to protect my child, you cultivated a forbidden technique. Yes, everything the Bloodbone Barbarian King had done was for Feng Gu, for the child in Feng Ji's belly. Even though he knew that Feng Gu didn't love him, and that the child in Feng Ji's belly was another man's child, but he still disregarded everything, even sacrificing himself, just to protect Feng Gu, cultivating a forbidden technique, using other divine bodies as nourishment. He had become a street rat, and everyone wanted to beat him up. Furthermore, even she had to come forward to suppress him. He had to bear her misunderstanding, her confusion, and her disappointment. But she knew everything that had happened. She knew everything. But he accepted it as a matter of course. He even pretended not to know anything. Looking at him, he was like a clown, sacrificing everything for her. I'm very grateful to you, really. The woman smiled at him. However, his eyes were filled with coldness. Now that my child has been born, Your final role now is to fulfill my reputation and die by my hand. She leaned down slightly. The foot that was stepping on the barbaric Bloodbone King's chest increased in strength. Don't you love me very much? Now everyone in the world is questioning whether the Divine Emperor's faction is unable to kill you because of our relationship. I protected you. If I kill you now, I'll definitely be able to clear my name. For me, so die. The barbaric Bloodbone King's face darkened. He could tell that the woman's words came from the bottom of her heart. He curled his lips into a sneer, and his eyes were filled with surging waves. Just as the woman's sword was about to descend, he made a move. He grabbed the woman's ankle. Gotcha. The woman's bare leg was broken. The woman cried out in pain. The barbaric Bloodbone King seized the opportunity to flip over and roll down the cliff on the other side of the cave. The woman limped as she chased after him. He looked down at the bottomless abyss. The gravel rolled around his feet, but he couldn't even hear the sound of the gravel hitting the ground. Chapter 4498. That woman called Fengge. It shouldn't be like this. Even though she had only met Fengge twice, she could also conclude that Fengge was definitely not such a person. The Fengge that he had seen in the previous memory. She was 100% sure. Fengge genuinely regarded the barbaric Bloodbone King as his own brother, or even his family. The look in her eyes could not be faked. But this memory, Fengge's image had completely collapsed. She looked at the barbaric Bloodbone King with a cold and emotionless gaze. It was as if all the feelings in the past were fake. There was a voice in Yi Qingluo's heart that kept telling her, Fengge was definitely not such a person. All of this must be a misunderstanding. Yi Qingluo pursed her lips and retracted her vision. She summoned Qiqi and hopped onto its back. He asked Qiqi to jump off the cliff with her to look for the Bloodbone Barbaric King. The cliff was extremely high, and falling down would basically result in one's body being smashed to pieces. There probably wouldn't even be any scraps of flesh left. However, the Bloodbone Barbarian King was definitely not dead. If she had died, she would not have met the Bloodbone Barbarian King, and would not have been brought to the Heaven Realm by him. The Bloodbone Barbarian King must have activated the male protagonist's halo when he fell. Riding on Qiqi, he searched all over the place. Another wave came. The earth quaked, the mountains shook, and space distorted. Yi Qingluo. It was time to switch spaces and switch memories again. By the time the darkness in front of her dispersed, Yi Qingluo regained her clarity. Everything in front of him, nothing had changed. It was still below the cliff. She was still on Qiqi's back. Yi Qingluo. What was going on? What happened just now? Wasn't the memory going to change? Why was there still no change? Is the program faulty? Yi Qingluo had a dazed look on her face as she rode on Qiqi, and continued to look around the cliff to see if there were any caves halfway up the mountain, or places within the tree branches. After searching for at least 2 hours, Yi Qingluo still hadn't found any traces of the Bloodbone Barbaric King. Without a goal, there was no way to find it. After searching for such a long time, it was time for Qiqi to rest. Yi Qingluo found a place to land and kept Qiqi back into the pet space. Suddenly, he heard the sound of someone stepping on a withered branch. Yi Qingluo's eyes shone brightly as she speedily dodged to one side, staring intently at the direction where the sound came from. Based on experience, as long as someone appeared, they would definitely be able to bring her back to the main character of this memory. As expected, very quickly, a blazing figure appeared in front of Yi Qingluo. It was Fengge. Yi Qingluo was slightly stunned. Why was she here? Could it be? He also felt that the barbaric Blood King wasn't dead, so he purposely ran down the cliff to stab it a few more times? No, that's not right. The look in the woman's eyes was different from before. The woman's footsteps were very hurried, and there was even a hint of panic. He quickly scanned his surroundings. The worry and nervousness in his eyes could not be concealed. The woman stopped at the place where Yi Qingluo was standing earlier. Her puzzled gaze surveyed the surroundings. Just now, I was obviously here and heard the commotion. I thought it was Agu. Why is there no one here? The woman paused, then raised her voice and called out, "Agu, where are you? Agu." But the quiet surroundings didn't give her any response at all. The woman sighed softly, "Hope Agu is fine." Chapter 4499. Yiqing Luo, who was hiding in the dark, her body tensed up, prepared to execute her blink movement to escape. After all, she had already experienced Feng Jiyi's strength. With Feng Jiyi's strength, it was actually very easy for her to sense her presence. However, the woman clearly did not sense her presence. On this point, Yiqing Luo also felt a little strange. There were a few times when she peeped at him from the side. Neither the Bloodbone Barbarian King nor Feng Ge noticed her presence. Was it because her hidden skills were getting better and better? Looking at Feng Ge, who had already walked far away, Yiqing Luo decisively chose to follow behind Feng Ge. It was simply a routine. As long as he followed Feng Ge, he would definitely be able to find the Bloodbone Barbarian King. As expected, after following Feng Ge for less than an hour, Feng Ge found the Bloodbone Barbarian King in a cave on the mountainside. Yiqing Luo. Damn it! She could say that she had gone through no less than 20 caves. Why didn't they find this cave? He followed Feng Ge into the cave. Yiqing Luo saw from afar that the Bloodbone Barbaric King was covered in blood, lying on the ground, and had already fallen into a deep coma. His body was drenched in blood. Yiqing Luo felt apprehensive. He was injured to this extent, but he was still alive. His life was really tough. When Feng Ge saw the Bloodbone Barbarian King, his face immediately turned pale. She quickly walked to the Bloodbone Barbarian King's side and whispered its name. But the barbaric Bloodbone King did not react at all. His body was also extremely cold. If it wasn't for the faint breathing sounds coming from his chest, he would have been dead. They would probably think that he was dead. Feng Ge forcibly fed the Bloodbone Barbarian King a lot of elixirs from his interspatial ring. She also infused her dark force into his body. After tossing and turning for a long time, the Bloodbone Barbaric King did not have the slightest reaction. Feng Ji's voice was hoarse and choked as he called out the barbaric Bloodbone King's name. She clenched her fists tightly, her eyes filled with unswerving determination. "Agu, I won't let you die. I absolutely won't let you die." She raised her hand. A stream of flame-like light flashed across his fingertips. Bit by bit, she sweeps the wrist, the fingers. Then he stroked his neck, his ears. Immediately after, rays of light shot out. Yiqing Luo, who was hiding at the entrance of the cave, was pierced by this ray. Then, she saw the top of Feng Ji's head. 5 flaming red objects were floating in the air. A ring. It was a bracelet that looked like a line of blood. It was a bright necklace. A pair of ruby earrings. It was a transparent jade pendant with flickering flames. Following the release of the woman's profound energy, the blazing light emitted by the 5 ornaments slowly formed a line. Seeing this scene, Yiqing Luo almost jumped out of the cave entrance. Her eyes widened in shock. He looked at Feng Ge in disbelief. She would never mistake those 5 ornaments. Azure Water Divine Artifact, Azure Water 5-piece set. The ring and the bracelet were exactly the same as the one she was wearing. Why was the Azure Water 5-piece set on Feng Ge? She can still use these 5 divine artifacts? And it was obvious that Feng Ji's control over the god weapon was much more proficient than hers. She remembered. The vast water divine artifact was a divine artifact forged by the divine emperor. Could it be? The woman in front of her, named Feng Ge, was actually the divine emperor? This thought made Yiqing Luo totally stunned. Right from the start, she had been suspicious of Feng Ji's identity. But the memories changed too quickly, so she didn't go to investigate further. Download address, phone reading. Chapter 4500. Now when he strung all these things together, she was absolutely sure that Feng Ge was the emperor of divine emperors. Yiqing Luo stared blankly at the 5 vast water divine armaments. He stared blankly at the lady who was controlling the divine weapon with her eyes closed, and injecting its power into the brute Bloodbone King's body. His heart suddenly beat faster. The emperor of divine emperors. It was possible that they were her relatives. From the moment he saw the murals, She knew that there was a connection between her and the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. He was also guessing. What was the relationship between him and the Divine Emperor? When he saw the Emperor of the Divine Emperor himself, she had an intuition. She was definitely related to the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. This kind of feeling made her heart beat faster and her eyes sour. They were all deeply confirming one thing. The Emperor of the Divine Emperor was her family. No wonder. Ever since she first met Feng, she had felt an indescribable sense of familiarity from Feng. In the previous memory, everything that Feng had done to the Bloodbone Barbarian King, she had always felt that it was strange. He couldn't believe that Feng was such a person. It was an intuition that came from the depths of his soul. Yi Qingluo pursed her lower lips slightly as her eyes were fixated on Feng Ji's every move without blinking. Want to unveil her veil. She wanted to see what this family member, who had a deep connection with her, looked like. Under Feng Ji's control, the power of the divine weapon slowly seeped into the Bloodbone Barbarian King's body. Coupled with the assistance of elixirs, the external injuries of the Bloodbone Barbaric King were slowly recovering. In the next few days, Feng had been taking care of the Bloodbone Barbarian King in the cave. Every day, he persisted in using the power of the divine weapon to repair the barbaric Bloodbone King. And during this period of time, this memory did not jump to the next one. How long had Feng been taking care of him? Yi Qingluo squatted at the entrance of the cave for a long time. Feng didn't discover Yi Qingluo. Yi Qingluo didn't appear to disturb Feng. It wasn't that she didn't want to appear. Instead, in this memory, she was a non-existent person. If she appeared, this memory would be disrupted. She might not be able to find the true memories of the barbaric Bloodbone King. This part, he had the memories of the Divine Emperor. She wanted to know the love and hate entanglement between the Divine Emperor and the Bloodbone Barbarian King. He wanted to know why the Emperor of the Divine Emperor had passed away. He wanted to know just what exactly had happened within this. A few days passed. The injuries of the Bloodbone Barbarian King had long since healed. However, he never woke up. His handsome face was like that of a sleeping demon. Even though he was in a deep sleep, he still exuded boundless coldness. Feng did not know the reason, but he thought of many ways. But it was useless. Yi Qingluo could roughly guess why the barbaric Bloodbone King hadn't woken up. He was afraid that he had locked himself in his own world, unable to walk out of that darkness. Because he could not accept the fact that Feng would kill him. He could not accept Feng Ji's cruelty to him. For the Bloodbone Barbarian King, if Feng had made her attitude clear from the beginning and asked the barbaric Bloodbone King to sacrifice for her, she would not have believed it. The barbaric Bloodbone King will not hesitate to satisfy all of her requests. However, from the Bloodbone Barbarian King's point of view, Feng was using him. Take advantage of his love. To achieve her goal. The barbaric Bloodbone King was unwilling to wake up, unwilling to face this fact. This was a psychological problem. He could only let the barbaric Bloodbone King walk out from the darkness himself. No one could help him. There's more at the back. I'm writing, baby will read it tomorrow morning, moi. End of this chapter. Chapter 4501. On the morning of the fifth day, Feng kept the divine weapon and wore it again. Her gaze fell helplessly on Bloodbone Barbaric King as she muttered softly. When are you going to wake up? If you don't wake up, I'm leaving. As she said that, she lifted her leg and gave Bloodbone Barbaric King a light kick. I've been out looking for you for several days. A Huang must be searching for my whereabouts. You're now a sinner in the God realm. I can't let a Huang find you, bastard. Your injuries have obviously healed, but you still pretend to be asleep. The lady's soft voice sounded like a complaint, but Yi Qingluo could tell. That was mixed with deep concern and helplessness. That was only when facing a real old friend, a brother, she would have this tone and attitude. Feng really valued Bloodbone Barbaric King as a brother, a relative. Just as the lady was muttering beside Bloodbone Barbaric King, nagging about their past memories, the lady suddenly stopped in her tracks. Her entire body tensed up. The expression on her face also turned solemn and grave. A pair of enchanting eyes stared straight at the entrance of the cave. Oh no! Those people have found their way here. Feng stood up abruptly. The blazing red dress was like a burning fire. Her aura was no longer as gentle as a little girl's, but rather, it was cold and sharp. She turned back and took a look at Bloodbone Barbaric King who was lying on the ground. Her slender brows were tightly knitted into a bundle. I can't let them discover your existence. Agu, wait for me. I'll go lure those people away. After Feng finished her words, she quickly left the cave. Yi Qingluo shrank on the other side, and from afar she could see a huge wave of profound energy surging in the entire dense forest. Was it the God Emperor's men? They were here to look for Feng. Or did they know that Bloodbone Barbaric King wasn't dead, and wanted to hunt him down? Feng Ji's figure speedily headed towards the direction of the profound energy. But a moment later, the Xian wave on the other side slowly stopped. After that, the dense forest resumed its original peace. It looked like Feng Ji's appearance should have dissuaded those cultivators. Yi Qingluo retracted her gaze and looked towards the cave again. This look. She nearly fell from her hiding place. Because it was unknown when the barbaric Bloodbone King had woken up. He sat up straight, one hand on the back of his head, a puzzled expression on his handsome face. Yi Qingluo. She no longer wanted to complain about the direction of this memory. It was extremely melodramatic. Feng left. The barbaric Bloodbone King woke up. Wasn't this clearly to escalate the misunderstanding between the two of them? Yi Qingluo could guess the following plot even with her toes. The barbaric Bloodbone King thought that it was Feng who had injured him. However, he didn't know that he had been saved by Feng. Speaking from experience, Feng had just left, so it was unlikely that he would return. If he came back, wouldn't the misunderstanding between the two be resolved? That Feng from the previous plot. His ice-cold eyes and ruthless methods filled with killing intent didn't seem fake. But now it was Feng who had saved the Bloodbone Barbarian King. And his attitude was completely different from before. This was definitely a misunderstanding. However, based on the conversation between Xian and Yi Qingluo, when she first met the barbaric Bloodbone King, this misunderstanding probably hadn't been resolved even after the sovereign of God Emperor had passed away. Otherwise, when the barbaric Bloodbone King heard the sovereign of God Emperor's name, he would reveal such a disgusted and complicated expression. Chapter 4502. Moreover, the Bloodbone Barbarian King kept calling the Emperor of God Emperor's slut. In fact, he even built the Linglong Palace in an attempt to kill his way back to the God world. However, from the memories of the barbaric Bloodbone King, Yi Qingluo didn't feel that the barbaric Bloodbone King really hated Feng. He was only using this method to convince himself to give up on Feng. The reason he built the Nimble Palace was because he wanted to fight his way back to the God world. But in reality, all he wanted was an explanation from the beginning. Otherwise, he wouldn't have revealed such an expression after learning that the Divine Emperor had passed away. In the end, it even disappeared. Yi Qingluo finally understood now. Why was Dmo Xian so certain that the barbaric Bloodbone King would not harm her? Because of her relationship with the Divine Emperor. No matter what, the barbaric Bloodbone King would not do anything to her. It was no wonder. After the Bloodbone Barbarian King abducted her to the Heaven Realm, he gave her a supreme status, and even handed over everything in the Gu residence to her. However, he did not meet her, because he didn't know what kind of attitude he should use to face her. She was related to the Emperor of the Divine Emperor. From the looks of it now, she began to sympathize with the barbaric Bloodbone King. The unrequited love is the most hurtful. However, he couldn't give up so easily. It was unknown whether the Bloodbone Barbaric King had awoken because it had subconsciously heard Feng Ji's words. If you don't wake up, I'll leave. Or, it had already thought things through. In short, the barbaric Bloodbone King sat on the spot for a while before he stood up and walked out of the cave with a gloomy expression. In a dense forest, the thick, withered leaves covered all traces of people. The barbaric Bloodbone King swept his gaze around. He didn't discover anyone else. He also didn't smell the aura of the person he wanted to see in the air. He closed his eyes slightly. He was obviously disappointed. Sure enough, he was deeply in love with the Divine Emperor. Even until now, The Bloodbone Barbarian King was still hoping to see Feng Ge. He wanted to hear her explanation. Even if it was a made-up explanation. As long as she said it, he would believe it. The barbaric Bloodbone King stood in the dense forest for a long time. Standing there, Yiqing Luo felt the earth shaking and the space in front of her started to distort. It was time to switch memory spaces again. This time, Yiqing Luo automatically closed her eyes. The feeling of that darkness penetrating his eyes was very uncomfortable. When the feeling of the earth shaking and mountains shaking disappeared, Yiqing Luo then slowly opened her eyes. He adjusted himself to the brightness of the light. He scanned his surroundings. She was now in a huge mansion. It was resplendent and luxurious. She looked very familiar. This was the bone residence that she lived in when she was in the heaven realm. Yiqing Luo was trying to figure out what time this memory was from. In an instant, he had gone from the god realm to the heavenly realm. However, at this moment, the Gu residence was extremely gloomy. It was such a huge venue. Not even a shadow of a person could be seen. It was empty, silent, and the atmosphere was a little strange. Yiqing Luo followed her memory and found the Bloodbone Barbaric King's courtyard. He had yet to get close. Her hand was suddenly grabbed by a force. His entire person was suddenly pulled into the darkness. Yiqing Luo was on high alert as she turned her hand to attack the person behind her. However, when he caught a glimpse of a black figure out of the corner of his eye, he stopped. She frowned and looked behind her. What came into view was the palace lord of the secluded palace who was shrouded in a black robe. In the darkness he looked even more sinister. Chapter 4503. Yiqing Luo's eyes sunk. It's you. The palace lord's hand was still clasping her arm. His eyes under the black robe were slightly dark. Didn't I say not to follow? Yiqing Luo raised her brows. You say no and I won't follow? The current owner of the bone residence seems to be me. You barged into my territory. The palace lord's emotions fluctuated, as though there were some ups and downs. After some time he sighed helplessly. You shouldn't have come in. Bloodbone Barbaric King's memory. Is your motive? Yiqing Luo flung his hand away, as her lips curled into a cold arc. How is it? Have you seen what you wanted to see? The palace lord wanted to say something, but when the words reached the tip of his tongue, he swallowed it back. In the end, he only spat out 3 words, not yet. Yiqing Luo scoffed lightly, as her long and narrow eyes didn't conceal her ridicule. Her gaze swept past the Bloodbone Barbaric King's courtyard. The ridicule in her eyes deepened. If I ask you, what is the Palace Lord of Darkness trying to get from the Bloodbone Barbaric King? Will you answer? The Palace Lord of Darkness raised his head slightly. The black robe covered his face, and his current emotions couldn't be seen. His voice was slightly hoarse. What did you see? He didn't answer, but asked back. Yiqing Luo didn't hide, as she was very straightforward. Bloodbone Barbaric King's memory. She paused as her long and narrow eyes curved. Don't tell me. You didn't see it? If he had seen earlier, those memories between the Bloodbone Barbaric King and the Sovereign of Gods. At this moment, he definitely wouldn't ask like this. For a long time, there was no response from the other party. This was also indirectly confirmed. The other party was indeed. She didn't see anything. Yiqing Luo suddenly laughed. Looks like Palace Lord's luck isn't too good. You finally got by Mei as a sacrifice to open the Bloodbone Barbaric King's sealed memory entrance. But in the end, you didn't get anything. What did you see? He asked again, as his voice became much heavier. Yiqing Luo shrugged. I naturally saw something that you didn't, of course. I can't tell you. Yiqing Luo. He suddenly spoke in a serious tone. Tell me now, what exactly did you see? If you tell me now, perhaps I can still guarantee your safety for the time being. But after this, I can't predict how Master will treat you. Yiqing Luo's eyes curved into a smile. You want to know? Why don't you tell me what Yu Palace's goal is? What does Yu Palace want? He fell silent once more. Yiqing Luo's brows curved slightly as her lips curled up, revealing a hint of slyness and ridicule. Since you're not willing to answer, then let's forget about this deal. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, She didn't look at the palace lord of Seclusion Palace. The man behind him had no intention of asking any further questions. The atmosphere turned silent once again. There was an awkward atmosphere in the air. After a while, the palace lord of Ethereal Palace then retracted his thoughts as he frowned slightly and opened his mouth. Yiqing Luo, even if you don't say it now, when master makes a move on you, Shu, be careful. Suddenly, a cautious voice was heard from not too far away. She saw a 30 to 40-year-old middle-aged man, leading 2 male servants, carefully walking towards Bloodbone Barbaric King's courtyard. Chapter 4504. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace immediately kept quiet. Both of them quietened down as they looked at the person in front of them vigilantly. The middle-aged man and the manservant didn't notice the 2 people in the dark as they whispered to each other as they walked. Your daily task is to clean up Bone Lord's courtyard and send the 3 meals to his door. Do you understand? The 2 servants nodded obediently, but there was still a look of fear on their faces. Don't be afraid. The middle-aged man comforted them. As long as you don't make any noise when you work and disturb Bone Lord, you will be safe and sound. Although they said that, their faces were still very pale. You should feel lucky to work in Bone Lord's courtyard. As long as you pay attention and don't disturb Bone Lord. Your monthly allowance is higher than others and your life will be much easier. The middle-aged man continued. You 2 are smart kids, just pay attention. As he said that, the middle-aged man sent the manservant to Bone Lord's courtyard and left. After the middle-aged man left, the 2 manservants looked at each other in dismay. Then they looked at Bone Lord's direction. The 2 of them walked into the courtyard silently. Yiqing Luo, who was in the dark, raised her brows when she saw this scene. Those 2 manservants didn't look as innocent and harmless as they looked on the surface. They acted so afraid in front of the middle-aged man. But when the middle-aged man left, the 2 of them walked into the courtyard without any hesitation. Interesting. This was a sign that something was going to happen. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace glanced at Yiqing Luo's honeyed smile and frowned slightly. What are you smiling at? Yiqing Luo didn't turn back to look at him as her gaze was fixed on the 2 manservants. There's a good show to watch, I'm happy. Good show? The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace frowned in puzzlement. Just as he finished his words. Soon after, the 2 servants quickly approached the Bloodbone Barbarian King's room. Their speed was so fast that it wasn't something an ordinary manservant could possess. The Lord of Secluded Darkness Palace was stunned for a moment as his gaze stopped on Yiqing Luo for a moment, as though he was puzzled why Yiqing Luo knew that there was something wrong with those 2 manservants. After looking for a long time, he didn't see anything strange. Yiqing Luo didn't bother about him. Only then did he turn his eyes back to the servant. The 2 servants were clearly well trained. One on the left and the other on the right, they leaped to the door of the barbaric Bloodbone King's room. One of them took out a bamboo tube and inserted it into the window. The servant placed his mouth on the bamboo tube and was about to put the medicine in. Suddenly his expression changed. He abruptly left the bamboo tube and leaped backwards. The servant's body fell heavily to the ground. Black blood flowed out from the corner of his mouth. When the other servant saw this, he looked at the bamboo pipe that was stuck in the window, but did not move at all. Realizing something, he quickly turned around and wanted to escape. But just as he made his move, the tightly shut door suddenly opened. A terrifying profound light shot out from the door. In an instant, the servant who had escaped was brought back. A tall and straight figure walked out of the room. The Bloodbone Barbarian King looked dejected. His brocade robe was covered with wine stains and his long black hair was messy like a chicken's nest. He didn't know what else was stuck on it. How could he still have the elegance he once had? But no matter how disheveled and dejected he looked, the moment he walked out, the frightening aura emanating from his body was enough to intimidate people's hearts. When they saw him, the 2 servants who had fallen on the ground immediately climbed up and looked at the Bloodbone Barbaric King vigilantly. End of this chapter. Chapter 4505. Who are you? What's your purpose in approaching me? The barbaric Blood King's voice was cold. The servants looked at each other. One of them wiped the blood off his lips, got up and slapped the direction of the barbaric Blood King. The other quickly surrounded the barbaric Blood King from behind. The two servants showed their killing moves when they attacked. The barbaric Blood King sneered, his eyes full of contempt. In the face of the servants' attack, he did not even budge an inch. Standing on the spot, he casually waved his sleeves. The powerful dark wave was like a surging wave. With a bang, he stood in front of the two servants, blocking their way. The two servants were thrown to the ground by the powerful force, spitting out mouthfuls of blood. We were just ordered to test Bone Lord's identity. The servants knew that they were no match for the barbaric Blood King, so they immediately lowered their stance. The first servant explained, because the name of Bone Lord is the same as the sinner from the divine realm, so someone offered a high price to let us test the relationship between you and the sinner from the divine realm. Sinner? The barbaric Blood King's eyes darkened, and a sharp glint flashed across his eyes. We know that you are definitely not that sinner, but the other party offered a high price, so we just came to test. The second servant hurriedly said. The barbaric Blood King frowned slightly, and did not speak for a long time. The expression on his face was very indifferent. The silent look on his face. This caused the two servants to tremble in fear. Their eyes were filled with unconcealable fear and dread. They did not expect. The strength of this person called Bone Monarch was actually so high. Trembling with fear, they waited for the barbaric Blood King's verdict. However, the barbaric Bloodbone King's expression did not change as he turned around and returned to his room. With a bang, he closed the door once again. The two servants outside the door were dumbfounded. What did this mean? Bone Lord did not kill them? And did not intend to punish them? Could it be that he let them go? The two servants stared at each other blankly for a long time. Finally, they carefully walked out of the courtyard. With a limp and a tentative step, he turned his head back with every step. He walked out of the courtyard. No one stopped him. The two servants shuddered in fear and eagerly wanted to escape. Just as they supported each other, and were about to leave, a hand suddenly appeared in front of them. Then a black shadow flashed past his eyes. They only had time to see a black robe. Then his feet left the ground. He could hear the sound of the wind whistling in his ears. By the time their feet touched the ground again, they saw a figure shrouded in a black robe, and emitting an austere aura standing before them. The two servants were so scared that their legs went soft. They knelt on the ground and begged for mercy. Bone Lord, spare us. Bone Lord, spare us. We won't dare to do it again. We won't dare to. If you listen obediently, no one will kill you. Suddenly, a clear and melodious voice of a woman entered their ears. The two of them were stunned, and their begging and wailing stopped abruptly. He looked in the direction of the voice. Behind the black-robed man, a fairy-like woman in fiery red clothes walked out and looked at them with a smile. That smile was bright and dazzling, but the two only felt an inexplicable chill on their backs. You. Who are you? The servant asked in horror. Chapter 4506. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a smile. You don't need to bother about who we are. As long as you answer my questions obediently, you will be safe and sound. The two attendants exchanged glances, weighing the strength of both sides. Although he really couldn't tell how strong the black-robed man and the young and beautiful woman were, he still couldn't tell. But in terms of their temperament, the two of them decisively chose to be obedient. Ask away. From the mouths of the two servants, Yi Qing Luo roughly understood the current situation. It was probably from the memories before that. Feng Ge heavily injured the Bloodbone Barbarian King, and announced to the public. The Divine Emperor had personally suppressed the Bloodbone Barbarian King and annihilated it. From now on, there will no longer be a barbaric Bloodbone King. As for the matter of Feng Ge saving the Bloodbone Barbarian King, no one mentioned it at all. Other than Feng Ge himself, no one knew that the barbaric Bloodbone King was still alive. This explanation matched up with the version which Yi Qing Luo had heard from D.M.O. Xian previously. However, Yi Qing Luo expressed that there must be something that she didn't know. After all, it was the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory. There were some things that the barbaric Bloodbone King didn't know. She couldn't see it either. He could only imagine and guess. Yi Qing Luo looked at the two footboys for some time and asked again. Since Bone Lord has already died in God Realm, why do you still want to probe that Bone Lord's identity? The two servants hugged each other and explained while trembling. This bone mansion had suddenly appeared in the heaven realm. No one knew the identity of the master of the bone mansion. However, looking at the luxurious decorations of the Gu residence, it was clear that he was not an ordinary person. There were also profound practitioners who wanted to occupy the Gu residence's territory. They were heading to the Gu residence to stir up trouble. There was only entry and no exit. At first, there were people who didn't believe it. However, as more and more profound practitioners disappeared from the world after entering the Bone Mansion, as time passed, no one dared to take half a step into the Gu residence. As a result, the Bone Mansion became a strange and mysterious existence. Everyone in the Heaven Domain's ancient city was very curious about the Bone residence. But no one dared to test him. There was once when someone outside the Bone residence shouted the words Bone Lord. Everyone knew. The master of this Bone Mansion was called Bone Monarch. However, no one had ever seen this person called Bone Lord. Bone Lord. This name was exactly the same as the name of the sinner who had been suppressed by the Divine Emperor and reduced to ashes. However, no one would lump the two Bone Lords together. After all, the Emperor of the God Emperor had personally said that the sinner of the God world had already been reduced to ashes. However, the two servants expressed that they also did not know the appearance of the person who made the bid. They also did not know why that person would be so interested in Bone Lord. They took the money and entered the Gu residence to do their work. That person, when did he look for you? Yi Qing Luo narrowed her eyes as she asked. The servant replied, 3 days ago. 3 days. Yi Qing Luo's eyes flashed past a meaningful smile as she asked again. Then have you all heard of the matter regarding the Bone Lord being annihilated by the Sovereign of God? The manservant was stunned. He shook his head and said, That's a matter of the immortal realm. How can we, the people of the heaven realm, get any information? Yi Qing Luo's brows rose as she seemed to be thinking about something. Manservant B suddenly thought of something as he patted his head. Speaking of this, I did hear a few seniors mentioning about the gossip in the immortal realm. But whether it's true or false, I dare not guarantee. Please remember this book's domain name. Com. Wonderful Book House mobile version website. Com. Chapter 4507. Tell me about it. Yi Qing Luo wasn't sure which period of time she had entered into this memory, but based on her current speculation, it should be at least half a year or more since that memory. Half a year. Bloodbone Barbaric King had yet to recover from Feng Ji's serious injury. Look at his dispirited look. Apparently, he didn't know that he was saved by Feng Ge. Yi Qing Luo really wanted to rush out and tell Bloodbone Barbaric King the truth. Unfortunately, this was only a memory that had been born. It wasn't the real world. Even if it changed the story in the memory, it couldn't change the fact that it had been born. Servant B recalled his senior's words and said, I heard that the Emperor of God fell in love with someone and gave birth to a child. Yi Qing Luo nodded. This piece of news was indeed true. Feng Ge was indeed pregnant and gave birth to a child for that person called Ah Huang. It seemed that this servant B's news was not fake. I heard that everyone in the God realm was trying to find out the identity of the person who fell in love with the Emperor of God. But it seemed that no one knew who that person was. But later on, it was said that the Emperor of God's child had disappeared and the child's father had also disappeared. Now the God realm is in a mess and the Emperor of God is looking for his child everywhere. Servant B's words made Yi Qing Luo's eyes move slightly. The child was missing? And that person called Ah Huang was also missing? The child's father had run away with the child? After Servant B finished, he looked at Yi Qing Luo carefully. I have said what I should say now. Now can we? Yi Qing Luo waved her hand. The two of them were in a hurry to escape. The palace lord of secluded Darkness Palace looked coldly at the two figures who were leaving and turned to Yi Qing Luo. You believe what he said? Yi Qing Luo raised her brows. Why not? There was no need for the servant to lie. What's more, the God realm and heaven realm were separated by thousands of miles. They were two different worlds. For the heaven realm to know of any news in the God realm, it would at most be an extremely explosive event. It was true that the divine emperor was pregnant and had a child. The disappearance of this child and the child's father in the God realm might not be fake. However, why would this memory appear in the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory? Could it be the disappearance of Feng Ji's child had something to do with the barbaric Bloodbone King? The person who probed if the Bloodbone Barbarian King was the Bone Lord of the Divine World was also someone from the Divine World? Or perhaps Feng Ji's men? No, it shouldn't be. At that time, when the two servants approached the Bloodbone Barbarian King's room, their bodies carried a murderous aura. Then he attacked the barbaric Bloodbone King. It was also merciless. If it was Feng Ji's people, it was absolutely impossible to kill the Bloodbone Barbarian King. She had a nagging feeling that there was something in all of this that she had overlooked, or perhaps she had yet to understand. Did you think of something? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace noticed the change in the girl's expression. Yi Qingluo kept her thoughts as she raised her eyes to look at him. Meeting with that pair of deep black eyes, she couldn't see through his emotions. Her lips curled slightly, revealing an arc that didn't look like a smile. Whatever I thought of has nothing to do with you. / Sogu. Chapter 4508. Yi Qingluo, now that we're in the same place, we're on the same boat. The palace lord of the Netherworld Palace didn't like this feeling of being isolated by Yi Qingluo. When Yi Qingluo heard that, she couldn't help but laughed out. Don't. You and I are not the same kind of people and our motives are different. She laughed and took 2 steps back. He widened the distance between him and the palace master of the Netherworld Palace. Then, she looked at him with a smile. You want to find the secrets in the Bloodbone Barbaric King's memories for the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. As for me, I'm just here to take a look and see if I can give you some trouble. She paused and spread her hands. So, we're actually standing on opposite sides. The palace master of the secluded palace stared at her with a hurricane in his eyes. Yi Qingluo tilted her head as the corners of her lips curled upwards, as she continued with a beaming smile. So, what do I know? How could I possibly tell you? Yi Qingluo. The palace lord's voice had sunk a lot. His hands under the black robe clenched into fists. He seemed to be suppressing some sort of emotion. His gaze towards Yi Qingluo grew deeper and deeper. Don't shout at me. It's useless. Yi Qingluo dug her ears. Why don't we have a fight? If you win me, I might tell you what I know. The palace master of the Netherworld Palace was obviously depressed. You know that I won't do anything to you. No, I don't know. Yi Qingluo hurriedly waved her hands, putting on an expression as though she wanted to cut off all relations with him. Don't portray yourself to be so affectionate in front of me. Yi Qingluo. The palace lord's tone became heavier, unable to accept Yi Qingluo's increasingly incisive words. Facing his anger, Yi Qingluo didn't have much of an emotion. She indifferently curled her lips and waved her hand at him. All right, let's disperse here. Go and complete your mission. You're not coming with me? The palace master of Secluded Darkness Palace pursed her lips. Do you think that by following me, you will be able to learn things that you can't? Yi Qingluo rolled her eyes at him. If I don't want you to know, and don't want Secluded Palace to succeed, do you think there's any use for you to follow me? The palace master of the Netherworld Palace's mouth moved. He did not want to be separated from Yi Qingluo. But what Yi Qingluo said was right. Between him and Yi Qingluo, it was an opposing situation. He came here. It was an order from his master. This was his mission. As for Yi Qingluo, she naturally wouldn't allow him to complete the mission so easily. In the end, he didn't say anything. Yi Qingluo only gave a sarcastic smile. Then, he turned around and disappeared in front of the palace master of Gloomy Palace. Far away from the palace master of Gloomy Palace, Yi Qingluo felt that the air was much fresher. There was a person who was watching her, and there was a high possibility that he was behind her. No matter how he thought about it, he felt goosebumps and uneasy. Although he wouldn't really hurt her. But this kind of injury was only not a threat to her life. As for the rest, it was hard to say. Yi Qingluo returned to the Gu residence. He found the courtyard of the Bloodbone Barbarian King with ease. At this moment, the courtyard was quiet. It was no different from when Yi Qingluo left earlier. The footboy's blood was still on the ground. It could be seen that the Bloodbone Barbarian King did not open the door after the servant left. Yi Qingluo concealed her presence. She quietly got closer to the Bloodbone Barbarian King's room. She wasn't sure if the Bloodbone Barbarian King would discover her approaching. Chapter 4509. After all, the strength of the two servants just now was not weak. He hadn't even gotten close. He was discovered by the Bloodbone Barbarian King. She did not think that her strength was above that of the Bloodbone Barbarian King. However, even if they were discovered by the barbaric Bloodbone King, she wasn't too worried. After all, she still had the teleportation secret technique to save her life. But when Yi Qingluo tried to get closer, there was no movement in the room. Yi Qingluo walked as she tried to go around to the back of the room. Then he tried to open the window at the back. As soon as he opened the window, the smell of alcohol assailed his nostrils. The interior of the house was dark, and it was impossible to see the surroundings clearly. There was a moment of silence. The people in the room didn't seem to notice the commotion outside. Yi Qingluo lifted up her skirt and squeezed into the window. The stench of blood and alcohol in the room was unbearable. Yi Qingluo covered her mouth and nose as she frowned as she walked in. She had entered the Bloodbone Barbarian King's room no less than 100 times in the Gu residence. As for the furnishings inside, he could practically come and go with his eyes closed. The room in her memory was exactly the same as the one she had seen before. Bang! There was the sound of something falling to the ground. Yi Qingluo was shocked. Soon, the room became quiet again. She remained silent for a long time, before approaching the direction of the sound. He bypassed the bedroom. Yi Qingluo walked to the front of the main hall. In the darkness, he could vaguely see a human silhouette lying on the ground, motionless. It was the barbaric Bloodbone King. Was he drunk? Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes slightly as she hid herself behind the pillar. After an unknown amount of time, the barbaric Bloodbone King finally moved. He moved. There was the sound of bottles clinking. It could be seen that there were a lot of wine bottles and wine glasses beside him. He struggled to get up from the ground. The sound of bottles crashing into each other could be heard as they fell to the ground. In the quiet and dark room, it was extremely ear-piercing. He staggered to his feet and groped for a moment on the table. Finally, he found a bottle of wine. He began to gulp down the wine again. Before the pot of wine was finished, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. He suddenly fell limp to the ground again. The wine pot fell to the ground, filling the room with the fragrance of wine. The broken pieces of the wine flask splashed towards Yi Qingluo's feet. This was simply the rhythm of leading a befuddled life. He drank when he woke up, slept when he was drunk, and continued drinking when he woke up. No matter how good one's physique was. If this went on, that's still alcohol poisoning, right? It was estimated that ever since the barbaric Bloodbone King came to the Heaven Realm, it had maintained this state. Looking at the Bloodbone Barbaric King's current state, he really did look like he had fallen out of love. Yi Qingluo squatted behind the pillar for quite some time. The Bloodbone Barbaric King was indeed drunk and unconscious. She simply walked out from the darkness. However, the moment she moved, there was no reaction yet. The sound of wine pots clinking against each other could be heard. In the next instant, a black shadow attacked him. The strong smell of alcohol filled his nose. Her wrist was tightly clasped by a cold hand. F***ck. Yi Qingluo let out a curse as she abruptly clasped that icy cold hand, trying to avoid it. But that strength was extremely strong. It was as if he was grabbing her hand and pulling her whole body into his arms. The smell of alcohol almost made Yi Qingluo faint. Was this barbaric Bloodbone King pretending to be drunk? Deliberately luring her out? Yi Qingluo cursed in her heart and was about to teleport away. Suddenly she heard a choked voice transmitted into her ears. Phone Ge. Phone Ge. Hurry up and read the latest update. Download address. Phone reading. Chapter 45:10. Phone Ge? He was calling. Phone Ge? Yi Qingluo's movements paused slightly. This pause made Bloodbone Barbaric King's arms hug her tightly. That strength almost kneaded Yi Qingluo into two halves. Yi Qingluo wanted to struggle. But just as she moved, Bloodbone Barbaric King panicked and increased his strength. He hugged her even tighter. As he hugged her, he spoke in a choked voice. Phone Ge, don't be angry with me. Phone Ge, I know I'm wrong, don't leave me. Don't. Yi Qingluo. Bloodbone Barbaric King had treated her as Phone Ge. She stopped struggling. Bloodbone Barbaric King then calmed down a little. Phone Ge. You came to look for me. You still came to look for me. You can't let go of me, right? Yi Qingluo felt uncomfortable being hugged, but she didn't dare to struggle too much. She could only purse her lips and said word by word. Let go of me first, you're using too much strength and it stinks. Her words made Bloodbone Barbaric King stiffen. Yi Qingluo's heart also jumped. Could it be that her voice was different from Feng Ji's and Bloodbone Barbaric King could tell? She immediately became vigilant. But unexpectedly, Bloodbone Barbaric King quickly let go of her and took a step back, like a child who had done something wrong. He lowered his head. Phone Ge, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. Don't be angry with me. I won't touch you, I won't touch you. As he said that, he lowered his eyes to look at his messy body. He hurriedly tugged at his clothes, as though he wanted to take it off, but Yi Qingluo was around. I'm going to change now. He had just taken 2 steps when he hurriedly swayed his body back. No. If I leave, what if you leave too? That careful look made Yi Qingluo inexplicably uncomfortable. Bloodbone Barbaric King, he really loved Phone Ge. This was the first time she saw Bloodbone Barbaric King put himself in such a lowly position. Even when he was facing Phone Ge, he didn't care. She had never been in this way. Yi Qingluo sighed. Don't go change, go rest. No. I don't need to rest. Bloodbone Barbaric King's emotions tensed up. Are you leaving? You still don't intend to forgive me. You still don't intend to take me back with you, right? Yi Qingluo frowned. What kind of plot development was this? According to the previous memories? No. The Bloodbone Barbarian King had misunderstood that Phone Ge wanted to kill him. After that, he should be filled with resentment. Why was he the one apologizing now? Yi Qingluo really couldn't understand it. She looked at the clearly unconscious barbaric Bloodbone King. It just so happened that he could take this opportunity to sound him out. Yi Qingluo coughed lightly as she recalled Feng Ji's tone and asked, Don't tell me. You don't hate me? The barbaric Bloodbone King was silent. His head was lowered, and it was hard to see his expression in the darkness. After a long while he slowly said, I don't hate you. I know that you blame me for doing such a heaven-defying thing. The words you said to me that day were all fake. It was all because you were angry at me. Yi Qingluo. This was just an excuse he came up with to make himself feel better, wasn't it? In that memory, Yi Qingluo couldn't tell. That Phone Ge intentionally said those angry words because he was angry at him. I won't do it again. Things that you don't like, I won't do it again. Bloodbone Barbaric King hurriedly raised his head as he swore seriously. Chapter 45:11. The next moment. His entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Phone Ge, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qingluo didn't know how to answer. After all, she wasn't the real Phone Ge. He also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Phone Ge, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone Barbarian King. He also didn't understand why Phone Ge would exhaust his own strength to save the barbaric Bloodbone King from the gates of hell. The story of these two was too complicated and melodramatic. Yi Qingluo didn't answer. The Bloodbone Barbaric King muttered to himself. His tone was filled with fear and uneasiness. It's fine if you don't want me to return to the God realm. Then you can also find time to visit me. Yi Qingluo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? Repeat 500 words. Refresh in 20 minutes. Ah, the UNIP grand ceremony is too tempting. Sob, 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 I was wrong. The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Fengge, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qingluo didn't know how to answer. After all, she wasn't the real Fengge. She wasn't sure what kind of mentality and thoughts Fengge had when he tried to injure and kill her, to take action against the Bloodbone barbaric king. He also didn't understand why Fengge would exhaust his own strength to save the barbaric Bloodbone king from the gates of hell. The story of these two was too complicated and melodramatic. Yi Qingluo didn't answer. The Bloodbone barbaric king muttered to himself. His tone was filled with fear and uneasiness. It's fine if you don't want me to return to the god realm. Then it's fine if you can find time to visit me. Yi Qingluo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Fengge, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qingluo didn't know how to answer. After all, she was not the real Fengge. He also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Fengge, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone barbarian king. He also did not understand why Fengge had exhausted all his strength to save the Bloodbone barbaric king from the gates of hell. The story of these two people was too complicated, too melodramatic. Yi Qingluo didn't reply. The Bloodbone barbaric king muttered to himself. His tone was filled with fear and uneasiness. It's fine if you don't want me to return to the god world. Then it's fine if you can find time to visit me. Yi Qingluo. Was he willing to be a kept man outside? The next moment, his entire aura was as gentle as a pet. Her voice was also very soft and slow. Fengge, don't leave me alone in the heaven realm. Don't leave me so far away from you. Yi Qingluo didn't know how to answer. After all, she was not the real Fengge. She also did not know what kind of mentality and thoughts Fengge, who had wanted to seriously injure and kill him, had when he attacked the Bloodbone barbaric king. She also did not understand why Fengge had exhausted all his energy to save the Bloodbone barbaric king from the gates of hell. The story of these two people was too complicated, too melodramatic. Yi Qingluo did not answer. Chapter 45:12. Fengge held his arm tightly with both hands, and looked solemnly at the Bloodbone barbaric king. Her voice was hoarse and choked with sobs. I know if it's Agu, he won't refuse any of my requests. Let me be selfish for the last time. You must take good care of my child. I only trust you, only you can trust me. When she said this, her tone was filled with endless sorrow. What on earth happened? The Bloodbone barbaric king sobered up a lot after hearing Fengge's solemn request. He shook his muddled head hard. Fengge, did something happen in the divine realm? This child, why? I don't have time to explain to you. Fengge hurriedly interrupted him, her face full of pleading and expectation. The only person I can trust now is you. I'll give the child to you. No matter who asks you for the child, you can't give it to him. Her eyes fell deeply on the child. It was as if she wanted to engrave the child's appearance in her heart. It was so painful and sorrowful. Agu, please, you must take good care of the child. After saying this, Fengge forcefully closed her eyes and withdrew her gaze from the child. Without waiting for the Bloodbone barbaric king to speak, Fengge had already rushed out of the courtyard and disappeared. The Bloodbone barbaric king held the child in his arms and quickly chased after her. However, Fengge's figure, along with his aura, had completely disappeared. If it wasn't for the fact that the child in his arms had confirmed Fengge's appearance, the Bloodbone barbaric king would have thought all of this was just a hallucination. The Bloodbone barbaric king stood in the middle of the courtyard for a long time with the child in his arms. He couldn't come back to his senses. It wasn't until the child grabbed his hand and bit it in his mouth that the Bloodbone barbaric king's consciousness came back. He stiffened his head and looked down blankly at the child in his arms. Wrapped in soft and warm satin, the little guy was really small. He was wrinkled and not very good-looking. The little chubby hand grabbed one of his hands and stuffed it into its mouth. Saliva stuck to his fingers. He couldn't feel the slightest bit of annoyance or impatience. Maybe it was because the little one had a pair of round, distinct black and white eyes. Because he was extremely similar to Feng Ge. The barbaric Bloodbone King stiffened. He turned around and returned to his room with the baby in his arms. As soon as he stepped into the room, the baby squeaked and waved his little hands. He even wrinkled his little face. The barbaric Bloodbone King realized that the house was in a mess. Perhaps even the smell of the mass grave was not as bad as this house. He left the room and closed the door. Very quickly, the middle-aged man who Yiqing Luo saw earlier, who brought along a manservant to the courtyard, who was also the butler of the Gu residence, brought along the cleaning staff. Then he asked the barbaric Bloodbone King to bring the child to another clean house. As for the reason why the Bloodbone Barbarian King suddenly had another child, the butler was very tactful and did not ask any questions. The Bloodbone Barbarian King asked Gu San to look after the child, while he quickly went to wash himself, getting rid of the smell on his body. The group of people was extremely busy. Although she was a little flustered, she wasn't very good with children. But in the end, it was not a big mistake. However, that child loved to nestle in the arms of the barbaric Bloodbone King. Giving Gu San a hug for a while, Gu San's face was grabbed a few times by the child. If it wasn't for the fact that the barbaric Bloodbone King valued the child so much, Gu San would probably fly into a rage. Chapter 45:13. Yiqing Luo was in the dark, silently watching everything that was happening in front of her. The Gu residence's secret guards were walking back and forth. Bloodbone Barbaric King was walking back and forth. But no one had discovered her existence at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she was able to converse with the others in her memory. If it wasn't for the fact that Bloodbone Barbaric King would have mistaken her for Feng Ge when he was drunk. She would have suspected it. Bloodbone Barbaric King and the others actually couldn't see her. Otherwise, based on Bloodbone Barbaric King's ability and the Gu residence's secret guard's ability, how was it possible that they hadn't detected her existence for such a long time? Yiqing Luo expressed a dazed look. After a day's worth of torment, Bloodbone Barbaric King fed and coaxed the child. He who had just become a father for the first time was already mentally exhausted. He placed the child by the side as he leaned against the head, gently caressing the little baby's head as he panted heavily. Until now, he still felt that all these were not real. All of a sudden, he had a child. Bloodbone Barbaric King lowered his eyelids as he gazed deeply at the little baby's sleeping face. His brows seemed to be tainted with a sliver of memories of the past. Your mother is really magnanimous, to hand you over to me just like that. He burst out laughing. Wasn't she worried that I would take revenge on her child because of what she had done to me? This sentence ended. He chuckled in a low voice. But this laugh was filled with obvious pain. Of course she wasn't worried. From the start till the end, she knew how much I loved her, so she dared to hand you over to me without any worries. His hand gently caressed the baby's smooth and tender skin. The minute he touched that piece of softness, the strength of his fingers subconsciously lightened. He was afraid that if he wasn't careful, he would cut the little baby's tender skin. You are the same as your mother, heartless. Even in a stranger's house, you can still sleep so soundly. Bloodbone Barbaric King's tone had an obvious change. She knew that I had no way to force myself and hurt her heart right. His gaze towards the little baby became gentler and gentler. Her low murmur was also very soft. He slowly closed his eyes. His hand was still on the baby's shoulder, and his strength was very gentle. Although I don't know what exactly happened in the divine realm, and I don't know what happened to your mother, but since your mother handed you over to me, I will take good care of you. In his mind, the woman said it over and over again. I only trust you, and only you can trust me. The only person I can trust now is you. Believe she really did know about his feelings for her. After an unknown period of time, the barbaric Bloodbone King's breathing slowly calmed down. Inside the house, the two of them were sleeping soundly. Yiqing Luo stayed for a long time. Only then did he slowly walk out from the darkness. As she quietly approached, her eyes were fixed on the barbaric Bloodbone King. He did not disturb the Bloodbone Barbarian King, even when he reached the edge. She held her breath and looked past the Bloodbone Barbarian King to the little baby. It was a small ball. It was wrapped in a soft silk cloth. Little Zhao's chubby fingers had unknowingly grabbed one of the Bloodbone Barbarian King's fingers. Not knowing why, when her gaze fell onto the little baby's upper body, Yi Qingluo's mouth was filled with an indescribable emotion. Like, something seemed to be burning in her chest. It wasn't that kind of scorching feeling. Just some kind of flame was fluctuating, surging bit by bit. Chapter 45:14. This feeling drove her bit by bit towards the bed. She wanted to see what this baby looked like. But, just as her gaze was about to land on the baby's face, her eyes suddenly turned black. The ground beneath her feet shook violently. The earth shook and the surrounding space started to distort. Yi Qingluo. Motherf *Ker, was this intentional? At such a crucial moment, she changed the spatial memory. She purposely didn't want her to see what the baby looked like. Yi Qingluo ridiculed endlessly in her heart. After the earth-shaking feeling, she opened her eyes again. She was no longer in the bone residence. What entered her eyes was a desolate mountain range. The surroundings were so desolate that there wasn't even a single tree. The sky was strangely oppressive and gloomy. Yi Qingluo frowned as she surveyed the surroundings. Based on her previous experience, usually when she reached this place, coupled with the surrounding environment, Yi Qingluo was certain this memory was going to stir up trouble again. The previous part was still half cruel and half sweet. Now it was going to start the sadomasochistic mode. Yi Qingluo, who had experience, indicated she didn't need to specially look for the brute Bloodbone King. Anyway, as an outsider who entered the brute Bloodbone King's memory, this memory would appear in front of her sooner or later. But there was a little doubt. Previously, when she met the Lord of Secluded Palace, he obviously wasn't clear about what she was talking about. Brute Bloodbone King's memory. Which meant, until now, the Lord of Secluded Palace hadn't seen Brute Bloodbone King's memory. What she and the Lord of Secluded Palace had experienced was different. What was going on? Was it because the Brute Bloodbone King's subconscious didn't want this memory to be known by the Secluded Palace? Then why? But she could clearly see every piece of memory, just as she was thinking. Suddenly, she heard a sound beside her ear. Yi Qingluo's brows twitched slightly. The sadomasochistic love was about to begin. She surveyed the surroundings. In such a desolate place, she really couldn't find any place to hide. In the end, she could only climb to a higher mountain. From this angle, she could only lie on the ground to carefully look at what was happening below. The dense black aura gave off a cold, suffocating feeling. Below, a figure ran up first. That person was dressed in a black robe, and he was holding a baby in his arms. The strong winds blew against his sleeves. Profound waves rippled in the air. Monstrous waves surged. This terrifying, imposing manner made Yi Qingluo couldn't help but hold her breath, as she retracted her own presence even more. He lay on the huge rock, not daring to move. This scene was inexplicably familiar. Not waiting for Yi Qingluo's mind to recall this familiar scene, a woman in a fiery red dress came quickly. Yi Qingluo. There was no need to reminisce. This scene was exactly the same as when Fenggu had heavily injured the barbaric Bloodbone King. Except for the venue. Apart from the Bloodbone Barbarian King, there was a baby in his arms. Fenggu held his long sword, his eyes cold as he stared at the barbaric Bloodbone King. No, more accurately speaking, she was staring at the baby in his arms. Yi Qingluo gauged with her eyes from this distance. The baby was much bigger than when Fenggu had carried him in her previous memory. Based on the time, it should have been more than 3 months. Give me the baby. Chapter 45:15. Bloodbone Barbaric King hugged the child in his arms tightly as a chilly intent flashed past his eyes. He carried the baby and had no intention to let go. What do you treat this place of mine as? His tone was extremely cold. Even his expression was so sunken that it wasn't the same as when he was facing Fenggu. The atmosphere between the two of them was extremely strange. Both of them were entangled with each other, as though they wanted to suppress the other party. Yi Qingluo's heart was filled with apprehension. She didn't know what had happened to Bloodbone Barbaric King to actually use such an attitude when facing Feng Ge. Even earlier when he displayed his forbidden skill and pretended to be evil to deceive Feng Ge, she had never seen such a chilly attitude between the two of them. Was there any conflict? And why did Feng Ge use such an attitude to ask for the child from Bloodbone Barbaric King? And even using her long sword to point at Bloodbone Barbaric King? At that time, she was the one who sent the baby to Bloodbone Barbaric King, wasn't it? Below, the two of them were still confronting each other. Feng Ji's veiled face was filled with anger. Bloodbone Barbaric King, return the child to me. This is my child. Don't force me to make a move on you. Bloodbone Barbaric King's pupils contracted slightly. His ears were filled with Feng Ji's voice. Bloodbone Barbaric King. She called him Bloodbone Barbaric King. She didn't call him Agu. It was an exclusive title that belonged to her alone. Was she trying to break off relations with him? Bloodbone Barbaric King's heart was in turmoil. He clenched his fists tightly as his eyes were burning with anger. He lowered his head and looked at the baby who was giggling at him and waving his hands at him. The surging emotions in his eyes were even more intense. As though he was in an intense struggle. He had entered into a frenzied state. Return the child to me. Feng Ge saw that he didn't respond for a long time. The chilly intent in her eyes was filled with a thick murderous intent. Her long sword moved and struck towards Bloodbone Barbaric King. Her action was clean and crisp without any hesitation. A dangerous aura shrouded Bloodbone Barbaric King. Bloodbone Barbaric King suddenly regained his senses as he raised his hand and waved out a burst of profound wave, blocking Feng Ji's attack. He held the baby tightly and leaped to the other side. Are you crazy? The child is still in my hands. What if he gets hurt? Feng Ji's attack just now. If he had been just a little slower. He wasn't the only one who was severely injured. Even this child would suffer a calamity. Did she hate and loathe him that much? You don't even care about your own child. That's my child. What I do has nothing to do with you. Feng Ji's words were cold and emotionless. Bloodbone Barbarian King. Don't think that I don't know the reason why you won't return my child to me. She gripped her sword tightly, and the edge of the sword shone with a cold light. Isn't it because of that Divine Phoenix profound heart jade in her body? Feng Ge spat out word by word. His tone was filled with ridicule. Unfortunately, you've miscalculated something. The so-called Divine Phoenix profound heart jade is something that only the next Divine Emperor has the qualifications to use. Even if you hold the child in your hands, you still won't be able to display the true use of the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. The Bloodbone Barbaric Monarch's face turned darker and darker as the woman continued to speak. His expression also became extremely ugly. The surrounding atmosphere fell into an icy cold state. And, at this moment, Yi Qingluo, who was sprawled on the huge rock. Her entire body was icy cold. Her heart was pounding violently. Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. That baby's body contained the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. Chapter 45:16. Yi Qingluo's hand slowly pressed onto her own heart. This place, there was also a Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. She held her breath. There was an idea forming in her mind, but she didn't dare to think too much about it. He didn't dare to think about it, but his mind kept repeating the same words over and over again. The baby's body contained the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. In her body, there was the Divine Phoenix profound heart jade. In this world, would two Divine Phoenix profound heart jades appear? She suppressed the surging emotions in her chest and looked down again. His gaze unconsciously fell on Feng Ge, the Emperor of Divine Emperors. Bloodbone Barbaric King, quickly give me the child. Feng Ji's stern voice interrupted Yi Qingluo's thoughts. At this moment, Feng Ji's eyes were overflowing with hostility. There was no trace of her usual gentleness and elegance. The barbaric Bloodbone King tightened his grip on the baby in his arms. His expression was cold. What did you just say? The profound heart jade in this child's body is the divine phoenix profound heart jade. Don't play dumb. If you didn't know the use of this child, why didn't you give him to me? Fengge sneered. The barbaric Bloodbone King's face turned ashen. He gnashed his teeth and glared at Chu Yang. You asked me for this child because of this profound heart jade? Fengge's eyes were full of disdain. Don't look at me like that. It's like I'm sorry. This is my child. I can do whatever I want. It has nothing to do with you. She waved her sword. The sharp blade shone with dazzling cold light under the reflection of the mystic light. Bloodbone Barbarian King, the current you, is no match for me. The barbaric Bloodbone King's pupils suddenly contracted, and he looked down at the child in his arms. You, what do you mean by this? Fengge smiled coldly. Don't think that I don't know the consequences of using the forbidden skill. The pupils of the barbaric Bloodbone King contracted even more. Yes, after casting the forbidden technique, he would have to pay an equivalent price. He needed. There was no end to using forbidden techniques and cultivating forbidden techniques to make himself stronger. However, ever since he was injured by Fengge, after the baby was born, since then he had never touched the forbidden art again. The reason he cultivated the forbidden technique was to protect Fengge. He wanted to dispel the restless factors that had ulterior motives towards the child in Fengge's womb. Later on, it was meaningless. Moreover, Fengge's child was born. After that, to the outside world, he was a dead man, sealed in the heaven realm, unable to go anywhere. He had no intention of continuing to practice forbidden techniques. Therefore, correspondingly, he needed to bear the pain of the backlash caused by the forbidden technique. The current him, perhaps in the heaven realm, he could be considered an expert. However, in the god world, it was simply not enough. Not to mention that his opponent was the emperor of the divine emperors. Furthermore, in the end he could not bear to hurt her. Whether it was in the past or now, he was no match for Fengge. Give me the child. Seeing that the Bloodbone Barbarian King did not respond after a long time, Fengge had already lost his patience. He raised his long sword and thrust it towards the Bloodbone Barbarian King. The barbaric Bloodbone King was still immersed in his own thoughts and did not react at all, until the murderous longsword swept past his eyes. Only then did he suddenly react and raise his head. The sharp longsword was coming towards his face. Subconsciously, the barbaric Bloodbone King held the child in his arms tightly and quickly avoided the incoming murderous aura. End of this chapter. Chapter 45:17. Oh, but the long sword still brushed past his arm, causing a huge wound. Fresh blood splattered all over the ground. Bloodbone Barbaric King quickly took 2 steps back as he stared at Fengge with an ugly expression. Give me the child. Fengge gritted her teeth. Her eyes were filled with malevolence as she swiftly attacked Bloodbone Barbaric King. That move after move was completely merciless. She really wanted to kill him and snatch the child. Bloodbone Barbaric King's heart was throbbing in pain, as though he had returned to the past. The scene when she injured him. Her coldness, her ridicule, all her murderous intent towards him. Wah! Bloodbone Barbaric King was so angry that he spat out a mouthful of heart blood. The blood stained his robe. However, he still firmly protected the baby in his arms, not allowing the baby to be stained by the blood in the slightest. The two of them fought each other just like that. Back and forth. From the beginning to the end, Bloodbone Barbaric King only avoided swiftly. Whereas Fengge's attacks were swift and violent, her target was the baby. Yi Qingluo, who was on top of the huge rock, felt strange as she watched the scene below. She couldn't explain the strangeness. Only, she felt that something was amiss. Fengge's goal was very clear, to get the baby back. However, her attacks were too fierce and ruthless. As though she was totally not worried that she would hurt her own child. While Bloodbone Barbaric King, his expression was very unsightly. The gaze he used to look at Fengge was filled with unfamiliarity. He was trying his best to protect the child in his arms. Every subconscious action of hers was to protect the child tightly. Yi Qingluo was sure. Bloodbone Barbaric King was unwilling to give the baby to Fengge. Not because of the so-called divine phoenix profound jade heart. It was from his heart, protecting the baby. But Fengge, her actions were too strange. Yeah. At this moment, the attack below stirred up waves, setting off thousands of waves. Yellow sand flew everywhere, and the ground cracked. It almost blinded Yi Qingluo's eyes. Vaguely, Yi Qingluo saw Bloodbone Barbaric King's body flying out. The baby in his hands also flew out. The little baby was still completely unaware of the current situation. It waved its little hands in the air and squeaked. When Fengge saw the child being thrown out, a greedy smile appeared on his face. She threw herself at the baby. She reached out to catch the child. Suddenly, bang! The ground shook violently. Profound waves surged, as if they were sweeping up the yellow sand that filled the sky. Rocks tumbled down. Fengge's body was shaken by this sudden movement, causing her to lose her balance. In the blink of an eye, bloody bones that looked like spider webs suddenly emerged from the ground all around him. He quickly caught the baby. Then he brought it to the Bloodbone Barbarian King's head. He didn't know if it was an illusion. Yi Qingluo looked over from this distance. He had a feeling that the Bloodbone Barbarian monarch's blood bones were different from before. The amount of red liquid on the bloody bones was decreasing. That frighteningly cold aura was also extremely weak. Below, the barbaric Bloodbone King took the baby back into his arms. The Bloodbone Barbarian King quickly formed a shield, blocking in front of Fengge. Do you know why I'm unwilling to hand the child over to you? Bloodbone Barbaric King's voice was deep and hoarse. The gaze he gave to Fengge became increasingly sinister. Chapter 45:18. The baby that was in her hands flew away again. Fengge's face darkened. She stared at the barbaric Blood King with a murderous look. Her eyes were filled with mockery and murderous intent. What? Are you not willing to show your ugly face in front of me? But now, for this child with the divine phoenix profound heart jade, you don't care about your image in my heart? What do I have to worry about with the current you? The barbaric Bloodbone King sneered as the corners of his mouth twitched. Yes. In the past, he had never dared to show such an ugly and terrifying face in front of Fengge. He would never let Fengge see a single bone in his body. In front of Fengge, he would always maintain his human form. But now there was no need. The sanguineous bones were wriggling in all directions. The barbaric Blood King's upper body was human, and he held the baby tightly in his arms. The lower half of his body was covered with bloody bones. His face was still as handsome as ever. Fengge's face was solemn, and her poisonous gaze was locked on the barbaric Blood King. She seemed to be very dissatisfied with his attitude. The barbaric Blood King's hand gently stroked the baby's delicate skin. His thin lips curled up slightly. His face was very pale due to the loss of blood. Back then, you were the one who sent the child to me, and now you want to take him away just like that. What do you think I am? The barbaric Blood King stared into her eyes and said word by word. Fengge, in your heart, I have always been a tool to be used, right? He did not want to give the baby to Fengge because he could not accept Fengge's attitude towards him. Back then, he did not allow her to explain at all. He gave the child that she had with another man to him, the person who loved her deeply. Now, without any explanation, he came to ask for the child. And his attitude was terrible, and he even tried to snatch it. In Fengge's heart. What was he? Hearing the barbaric Blood King's words, Fengge's eyes were even more vicious. She sneered. Yes, I am using you as a tool. After all, you are very useful, aren't you? You like me, and you do whatever I ask you to do. I just casually lied to you. And you're willing to give up your life for me. These were obviously extremely touching words. But it came out of Fengge's mouth. It was bone-chilling cold. Fengge sneered. He sneered at the Bloodbone Barbarian King's reckless sacrifice. Because I know you like me, so you will fulfill my request unconditionally. Do you feel very sad? Fengge sneered. Give me the child. This will be the last time we meet. I will never appear in front of you again. You don't have to worry that you will be used by me again. Fengge's words were sharp and sarcastic. The barbaric Bloodbone King's expression did not change at all, until she finished her last sentence. The man, whose gaze had been fixed on the baby's face, finally let out a low chuckle. He slowly raised his head. His pale and handsome face was filled with malevolence and madness. He smiled. His smile was strange and treacherous. He looked at Feng Ge, and his words were bone-chilling. You want a child, don't you? Unfortunately, I will not let you get what you want. As soon as he finished his words, the baby in his hand was thrown into the air. In an instant, it was densely packed with bloody bones. It was engulfed. Barbaric Bloodbone King. Feng Ji's eyes were bloodshot because of the sudden change. She screamed the Barbaric Bloodbone King's name. Her voice was extremely sharp. Chapter 45:19. Barbaric Bloodbone King. Actually, he had used the forbidden technique he had cultivated, to use the infant as nourishment and devour it. How dare you? How dare you touch my child? Feng Ji's sharp voice was filled with rage. She waved her long sword and slashed downwards. The majestic, terrifying, profound ray was about to destroy the heaven and earth. The entire barren mountain began to sink into the ground. The huge rock which Yiqing Luo was lying on was not spared. She hurriedly steadied herself on the huge rock. Just as she moved, the rock broke apart and fell downwards. Yiqing Luo took a few steps back to avoid the cracks and tried to find a foothold again. Not right. Something was definitely not right. Feng Ji's madness earlier was not because she was worried about the child. No, it was not that she was not worried. But her tone and attitude was not that kind of worry. Not the grief and anger of a mother who had lost her child. Instead, it was like discovering water in the desert and spending so much effort to reach the destination, only to discover that everything was an illusion. That kind. The anger of losing what she had spent so much effort to obtain. There was no pain or sadness. As for Barbaric Bloodbone King, it was even stranger. He actually treated the baby as nourishment and absorbed it into his bloodbone. His feelings for the baby. She saw it very clearly. That was absolutely not fake, true feelings. How could it be possible to swallow the baby? Furthermore, Barbaric Bloodbone King swallowed the baby's words. Had it been verified as well, that baby who possessed the Divine Phoenix profound jade heart was actually not the same person as her? The baby who had been swallowed was already dead. She was alive and well now. And the most important point was, the God Emperor had passed away, and her era was at least 10,000 years apart. 10,000 years. Wasn't she an old demon? Looked like the only explanation was, she might really not be that baby. Just as Yiqing Luo was avoiding the huge rock collapse, the two of them below were already locked in a fierce battle. Barbaric Bloodbone King had already fallen into a disadvantageous position in the battle, no matter how cold his words were. But when they really started to fight, he unknowingly avoided a direct confrontation with Feng Ge. But the more they exchanged blows, the Barbaric Bloodbone King could clearly see Feng Ji's twisted face. The horror in his eyes was filled with venom. Feng Ge was completely different from the Feng Ge in his memories. It was just like they were not the same person at all. In the blink of an eye, Feng Ji's sword swept past and pierced straight into the Bloodbone Barbarian King's chest. When the sword pierced through his heart, he could still see the disdain and anger in Feng Ji's eyes. Intense pain and dizziness caused by excessive blood loss. He could no longer maintain the form of a bloodbone. She fainted and fell to the ground. While he was unconscious, he vaguely heard the woman's cold and ruthless words. I spent so much effort to create this vessel, and it was destroyed just like that. Damn it. Container? What container? The Barbaric Bloodbone King couldn't think any further, and sunk into darkness. Feng Ge looked at the unconscious Bloodbone Barbarian King. The sword in his hand was about to pierce through his heart. Suddenly, as if he had thought of something, his movements paused. There was a cruel sneer in his eyes. She threw the sword on the ground. Destroying my vessel. How can I let you die so easily? There's a place that is absolutely suitable for you. Feng Ge directly carried the Barbaric Bloodbone King on her shoulder. The breeze blew the red veil on Feng Ji's face, revealing the red veil, that face which had been covered. Chapter 45:20. Her red lips were like fire, absolutely gorgeous. Exquisite facial features, bright and elegant. Coupled with that pair of soul-stirring eyes. The entire person was breathtakingly beautiful. Bright and flamboyant, almost able to overshadow everything in the world. Yiqing Luo's pupils constricted fiercely. Her body stiffened as well. Because that face that came into view was almost the same as her. Yes. The degree of similarity was at least 80% and above. Except that Yiqing Luo looked more immature and beautiful, whereas Feng Ge had the maturity and beauty of a woman. What was going on? Yiqing Luo subconsciously touched her own face. Countless thoughts were surging in her mind. A face that was almost the same. Feng Ji's daughter had a divine phoenix profound jade heart. She had it too. Could it be? Was she really that little baby? But wasn't that baby swallowed by the barbaric Bloodbone King? And 10,000 years had passed. How could she possibly grow up in Nirvana Realm's Three Springs sect? This wasn't right. The time didn't match. Yiqing Luo's thoughts were in a mess. These thoughts made her heart beat extremely fast. Actually, she had guessed this from the beginning. However, he had never associated himself with the God Emperor's true body. No, this was too confusing. She really couldn't make sense of this relationship. Yiqing Luo rubbed her face. Her gaze suddenly fell on her wrist, that circle of cherry blossom petals. Her hand pressed on the azure dew bracelet. Right. Look for Old Man Song. Old Man Song had seen the sovereign of God before. He was clearer than anyone else about what happened 10,000 years ago. But no matter how Yiqing Luo called for Old Man Song, her and Old Man Song's spirit could not connect at all. But her azure dew bracelet was not affected. On this side, Yiqing Luo was still in shock. On the other side, Feng Ge had dragged the barbaric Bloodbone King away. Yiqing Luo clenched her fists, thinking of that face under Feng Ji's veil. She leaped up and quickly chased up to Feng Ge. Feng Ji's eyes were cold. Her eyes were filled with killing intent, dragging the barbaric Bloodbone King at an extremely fast speed. Yiqing Luo was worried that she would be discovered by Feng Ge, and wanted to follow behind. For a moment he could not keep up with the two people in front of him. After Feng Ji's figure completely disappeared from the range of his senses, Yiqing Luo blacked out. Immediately after, his body trembled. When there was light in front of him again, she was already deep in the mountains and deep in the forest. In front of him was a huge black hole that surged with thick black fog. It looked extremely horrifying and terrifying. In front of him were Feng Ge and the barbaric Bloodbone King. Yiqing Luo was slightly stunned. That feeling just now didn't feel like the feeling of jumping to the next memory. Moreover, the two people in front of him were also in the scene just now. What was going on? Do you see what that is? Feng Ge threw the Bloodbone Barbarian King to the ground. The Bloodbone Barbarian King had already woken up from the jolting. He opened his somewhat turbid eyes and looked at the black holes that filled the sky. His expression changed slightly. Feng Ge smiled coldly, his eyes filled with ruthlessness. Do you think that it's so easy to swallow the container that I've tried so hard to get? Letting you die is letting you off too easily. Her long sword moved and directly stabbed into the barbaric Bloodbone King's shoulder, hanging him up. The barbaric Bloodbone King groaned in pain. Blood seeped out from his shoulder, soaking his robe. But he was stubborn and refused to make a sound. A pair of eyes filled with hatred stared fiercely at Feng Ge. End of this chapter. Chapter 45:21. Hate me. Feng Ge sneered. Don't you love me to death? When she said this, her eyes were filled with disdain. As though she disdained his feelings. Or as though she was extremely disdainful of his love for her. Bloodbone Barbaric King was in so much pain that his vision blurred. He gritted his teeth and groaned, word by word. Now I know. How silly I was in the past, to actually like a slut like you, for so many years. So much that he didn't even care about his life, causing himself to end up in such a state. Then you're not too stupid. At least now you know my true colors. Feng Ge seemed to be very happy. Her eyes were filled with coldness. You'd better kill me. Otherwise. I will definitely kill you. Bloodbone Barbaric King gritted his teeth and roared. But he had lost too much blood, and the pain in his body. It made him almost speechless. Fongu looked at him coldly, the corners of her lips curled into a cold arc. Kill you? Of course I can't kill you. She pointed to the front, at the sky full of black holes. This is something I specially made in the Nirvana realm. It's still in the experimental stage. Help me. Guard this place well. Fongu casually threw him into that black hole. Bloodbone Barbaric King groaned and was thrown into the black hole. Instantly, countless black chi gushed out from that black hole, like thousands of hands, grabbing hold of Bloodbone Barbaric King and swallowing him. Bloodbone Barbaric King's shrill scream was heard from the black hole. Those blood-curdling screams. It made one's heart tremble. Yi Qingluo's heart also trembled. Bloodbone Barbaric King was an especially tolerant person. Even the long sword pierced through his chest. He didn't even make a sound when the long sword pierced into his shoulder and lifted him up. But when he was thrown into the black hole, he let out a blood-curdling scream that showed the pain in the black hole. It was an unbearable pain for him. Yi Qingluo stared at Fongu without blinking. Her heart was still trembling. Fengji's eyes had no trace of emotion. It was as though she didn't care about anything about Bloodbone Barbaric King. What was she trying to do? Who's that? Suddenly, Fengji's eyes turned cold as she reprimanded. He raised his sword and flipped it in his palm. Yi Qingluo instantly felt a chill down her spine. It was like being stared at by a venomous snake. It was bone-chilling. Her heart skipped a beat as she met Fengji's murderous gaze. She quickly backed away. However, how could her speed compare to the Divine Emperor's? In the blink of an eye, Fengji's long sword had already pierced her eyeball. Just then, when it was still a little distance away from the eyeball, Yi Qingluo only felt her vision turning black. The surrounding space began to distort rapidly. As the ground shook, she felt as if she had fallen into an abyss. His whole body kept falling down. What was going on? Just now, it felt like he was jumping to the next part of his memory. Why was she falling from the sky in the next memory? Yi Qingluo wanted to flop around. However, he could not move his limbs at all, until the restraints on his body were broken. Only then did her vision regain its brightness. However, right now she was floating in mid-air. Their surroundings were pitch black, and they couldn't see their surroundings clearly. She tried to move. She discovered that she could actually walk in mid-air. It was like her soul was the same. What kind of situation was this? Bone Lord. Suddenly, a soft voice was heard from below. Yi Qingluo was stunned as she swiftly floated towards the voice. Chapter 45-22. In front of her, it was a piece of black sea. Two figures were moving bit by bit as they walked in the black sea. Walking? Sea? No. Not right. This was not the sea. Yi Qingluo's figure slowly leaned downwards. He could clearly see the figures of those people. They were that lady called Gu San and Gu Yi, Bloodbone Barbaric King's secret guards. These two of them were of course not those few secret guards that Yi Qingluo had interacted with in the outside world. The Gu residence's secret guards were ranked according to their numbers. This batch of secret guards should be the earliest batch of secret guards that followed the Bloodbone Barbaric King. Bone Lord, where are you? Gu Sen called out softly. Looking at his expression, he seemed to be struggling. Yi Qingluo carefully avoided the two of them and landed at a position slightly behind the both of them. She could see clearly. The surroundings were not a piece of black sea. It was obviously a ball of thick black fog, a piece of pitch black darkness. There was no place to hide. She could only maintain a distance as she followed behind those two secret guards. The two secret guards' attention had been focused on searching for the Bloodbone Barbaric King, and did not notice anything strange. Just at this moment, suddenly, there were a few cracking sounds in front of him. She saw the entire sky filled with thick black fog. One by one, the blood-colored bones stepped out. Kacha kacha. Even her ears were filled with the sound of the bones colliding. Yi Qingluo then saw it clearly. Under the thick black, there was a large patch of densely packed blood bones, and her surroundings were also covered with large patches of blood bones. But what shocked her was her body penetrated through every single blood bone. The densely packed, connected blood bones all passed through her body, as though they could not sense her existence at all. Yi Qingluo stretched out her hand to touch the blood bones. Her hand went through the blood bones. Yi Qingluo's heart thumped. Her gaze swiftly turned towards the Gu residence's secret guards. Was it these blood bones an illusion? Or was it her problem? Following the densely packed blood bones appearing, Gu Yi and Gu San's searching footsteps stopped. Gu San raised his head, looking at the blood bones that were almost as tall as a two-story building, his eyes filled with worry. Bone Lord, why are you looking for us? The two Bone Mansion secret guards stood away from the bloody bones. They also seemed to be very afraid of touching the blood bones. Kacha, kacha, along with the sound of bones cracking. A head slowly slid down the joints and appeared in front of the two of them. It was the head of the barbaric Bloodbone King. His face was pale and his eyes were filled with malice. He was like a trapped beast, so gloomy that it made people's hearts tremble. Take this out. The Bloodbone Barbarian King's hoarse voice sounded. A small baby wrapped in a soft substance was thrown into the arms of Bone San. Gu San hurriedly received it. Then she looked at the baby in her arms. His cheeks were pink, and he looked like he was sleeping peacefully. Her eyes reddened. Bone Lord, you spent so much effort to get in touch with us just to let us bring the child out? Gu San's voice was choked with emotion. Get out. The barbaric Bloodbone King shouted sternly. Gu San hugged the baby tightly. His eyes were red as he looked at the barbaric Bloodbone King's current appearance. This child is the child of the Emperor of God. You became like this because of the Emperor of God. Bone Lord, why do you have to hurt yourself like this for her child? You don't want to listen to this God's words? The barbaric Bloodbone King's voice became hoarser and sharper. After this loud shout, he couldn't stop coughing violently. Chapter 45-23. Bone Monarch. Bone 1 hurriedly said. Bone 3 is just concerned about you. Back then, Bone Lord did not devour this baby. Instead, he hid it in his own blood and bones. Fengge was deceived. When he was thrown into the black hole by Fengge, not only did Bone Lord have to fight against the evil aura in the black hole, but he also had to fight against it. He also had to protect the baby as much as possible. Until now. Only then did Bone Lord have enough power to establish contact with the dark guards of the Bone Residence. It was not easy for them to rush to the Nirvana realm and the black hole that was suppressing the Bone Lord. Bone Lord's request was not for them to think of a way to break the seal on the black hole and rescue him. Instead, he asked them to leave with the baby. See the baby? They would think of the culprit who caused their Bone Lord to be reduced to such a state. How could they be willing to take their children out? You have no right to tell me what to do. The barbaric Bloodbone Monarch's voice became sharper. The blood and bones around them tightly wrapped around the two of them. Take the child out and take good care of him. Don't hand it over to anyone. The two realized the Bloodbone Barbarian Monarch's intention and immediately said, Bone Monarch, tell us, is there any way to save you? We can't take care of this child. Bang. Before the two of them could finish their conversation, he was lifted up by the Bloodbone Barbarian King and thrown out of the thick black fog. After a while, silence returned to the surroundings. The barbaric Bloodbone King also did not move for a long time. Yi Qingluo saw the pain in his eyes. Yi Qingluo pursed her lips slightly. He slowly walked towards the Bloodbone Barbarian King. He was not worried that the barbaric Bloodbone King would discover him. For this place, she was just a soul. The Bone Mansion's secret guards could touch the Bloodbone Barbarian King's blood bones. And she couldn't. She could float around in this place. This meant that she no longer had a physical body. As expected, she approached the Bloodbone Barbarian King. The barbaric Bloodbone King did not move either. The skull embedded in the bloody bone looked like a statue, until Yi Qingluo approached. Only then did he vaguely hear a few sounds. Qingluo. Qingluo. Qing Luo. Yi Qing Luo's heart immediately tightened. His eyes widened. What the barbaric Bloodbone King shouted was her name. Just as she was about to lean in closer to hear more clearly, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly, her hand felt like it was being sucked by a huge suction force. She didn't have time to react. His body was suddenly sucked up by the suction force. Then his body fell heavily to the ground. Ah! The feeling of weightlessness made Yi Qing Luo cry out in shock. Suddenly he opened his eyes. What greeted his eyes was a patch of dazzling sunlight. It stung her eyes and hurt a little. She raised her hand to cover her eyes. A large palm covered her eyes. His slender fingers massaged her eyes with just the right amount of strength. The familiar scent of sandalwood seeped into his nose. Yi Qing Luo's hands grabbed that huge palm as she turned around abruptly. She saw the face that she longed for even in her dreams. Her face was reflected in his obsidian-like eyes. Yi Qing Luo's eyes widened. Ah, Xian. The person in front of her was Dmo Xian. She raised her hand and pinched Dmo Xian's cheek, giving him a hard pinch. Are you real? Surely I'm not still in the memory space, right? Chapter 45-24. Dmo Xian laughed softly. His long slender hand held her little hand and clasped it in his palm. You're back. He held on to her hand and slowly placed it on his face. Finally back. He murmured softly as he slowly closed his eyes. Feeling her scent, her warmth. Men rarely showed such a harmless expression on her face. Yi Qing Luo's heart was in a mess. From the man's big palm helping her to rub her eyes. From his aura enveloping her body and mind. She was certain. This Dmo Xian. He was her Xian. She had returned to the real world. This was no longer the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory. Yi Qing Luo's eyes gazed deeply at the man's elegant face. His picturesque eyebrows revealed an obvious tired look. His thick eyelashes spread out, casting an arc, but it was unable to hide the purple under his eyes. How long had she stayed in the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory? This man, how long had he been looking for her? Yi Qing Luo's hand slowly covered his eyes. Xian, I'm sorry, I made you worried. I know nothing will happen. Dmo Xian closed her hand and placed it by his lips as he gently kissed it. I just miss. Knowing that nothing would happen to her was one thing. Worrying was another. I miss too. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled into a sweet smile as she generously sent her lips over and kissed him. Dmo Xian's arms wrapped around her petite body, until the young lady gave a low laugh and that soft little tongue drilled into his mouth. His body shook. He suddenly pressed the back of the young lady's head and deepened the kiss. Their breaths intertwined. Like a life and death entanglement. They used their own way to declare their longing for each other. After some time, Dmo Xian then released the young lady and hugged her tightly in his arms. Yi Qing Luo could clearly hear the man's strong and powerful heartbeat. Once. From her eardrums, it penetrated her heart. Yi Qing Luo's brows curved as her little hand followed his waist and slowly slid down. I thought that you wouldn't be able to restrain yourself and continue to do some overboard things. Dmo Xian clasped her hand, his eyes filled with warning. Don't stir up the fire if you continue. I don't care if I'm tired or not. Yi Qing Luo hurriedly retracted her hand and pushed her little head against his chest. I'm tired. I'm so tired that I can't move. I can't take advantage of others' difficulties. Her hands were no longer messy. His little head began to rub against the fire. Dmo Xian looked at the furry little head in his arms as a helpless yet pampering smile flashed past his eyes. He held the girl's delicate body tightly, and stopped her from teasing him any further. If you tease me again, I'll take it that you want it. Yi Qing Luo giggled as she stuck her head out from his arms and circled her arms around his neck. All right, I won't tease you anymore. Isn't it so hard to see you? I'm happy. Dmo Xian bit her nose and his low and hoarse voice revealed a bewitching magnetism. Now let's play tonight. Let's try. Yi Qing Luo's cheeks blushed slightly. The two of them joked around for a while. The warm and sweet atmosphere made Yi Qing Luo's exhausted heart finally find peace. She leaned into Dmo Xian's arms as she played with his slender fingers and asked casually. That's right, the one who entered the ancestral hall with me was that Palace Lord Ming from Secluded Palace. Have you seen him? Download address. Phone reading. Chapter 45-25. Dmo Xian lowered his head and bit her earlobe. The strength between his lips and teeth was a little strong. Yi Qing Luo felt itchy and painful. Her body was still trembling slightly. Just asking a question and you need to be jealous. Please let me go. Please let me go. Listening to the young girl's soft pleading. The man then let go of her earlobe. But his thin lips were still attached to her ear. Between the rubbing of the lips, there was a scorching heat. He came out from the ancestral hall 2 days ago. Dmo Xian's voice sounded a little low, as if he was in a bad mood. He was also the one who told me that he had entered the Bloodbone Barbaric King's memory. Yi Qing Luo blinked her eyes and clicked her tongue. Looks like Baisu really hates me. Baisu? Dmo Xian frowned slightly. What has it got to do with Baisu? Yi Qing Luo pounced on him and pressed him under her body. What exactly is the relationship between you and Baisu? Dmo Xian supported her and let her lie firmly in his arms. He looked down at her and asked, what did Baisu do? Answer my question first. Yi Qing Luo climbed up his chest and both her hands pinched his face. After you answer my question, I will then know what kind of tone I should use to complain. Dmo Xian's pupils contracted slightly. He held Yi Qing Luo's slender waist. In his heart, he had roughly guessed something. But he still followed Yi Qing Luo's words. To me, she is both a teacher and a friend. Since I have memories, she has been by my side, like an elder sister, teaching me a lot, how to survive in this world. Since you have memories? Yi Qing Luo caught the main point. Amnesia? Not considered as amnesia. Dmo Xian shook his head. Just can't remember the things in the past. But those to me are not important. How can it not be important? Yi Qing Luo sat up straight, her little but sat on his stomach, both hands clutching his lapel. I said I don't seem to have heard anything about family. You've actually forgotten about it. Don't you want to know, who is your father? Don't want to find them and ask why they separated? The girl lowered her head and met his eyes. Her soft silky black hair cascaded down and landed on Dmo Xian's body and face. His hand gently rested on the young girl's slender waist as he gently curled his lips into a smile. With Lil Luo Air by my side, it is enough. He did not have much need for his past memories. He thought about what had happened in the past. To him, it was not difficult at all. It was just that he didn't want to, and couldn't be bothered to think about it. In his memory, having Lil Luo Air was his greatest happiness. The man's words instantly softened Yi Qing Luo's heart. She pursed her lips and patted his chest weakly. You only know how to seduce me with words of love and move me. I can't beat you. Dmo Xian pinched her waist. Now can you tell me what happened between you and Baisu? Yi Qing Luo pouted her lips and snorted. Even if Baisu is a teacher and a friend, I still want to complain. She rambled on and on about how Bai Mei had been deceived by the Palace of Gloomy Shadows and used as a sacrifice to unlock the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories. She also complained about Baisu's attitude towards her in an aggrieved manner. After that she hammered his chest. You had to wait for the Palace Lord of Gloomy Shadows to tell you. Only then did you know that I was in the ancestral hall. Baisu saw me entering the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories with her own eyes. So she obviously did not tell you on purpose. Download address. Phone reading. Chapter 45-26. Dmo Xian held her hand as his eyes turned extremely gloomy. I met her at the ancestral hall. Yi Qing Luo pretended to put on a fierce expression as she snorted lightly. See, she did it on purpose. Yes, she told me that she only saw that person from Secluded Palace in the ancestral hall, and had never seen you. Dmo Xian's expression turned darker and darker. He put his arm around the girl's waist. He slowly sat up straight. Yi Qingluo wrapped her arms around his neck. Do you believe me or her? I believe you. Mo Xian replied without any hesitation as he placed a hand on her waist and said word by word. Lil Luo, to me, you are more important than anything else. He slightly lowered his eyes, and a trace of coldness flashed across his eyes. Baisu, he hadn't thought about it. One day, he and Baisu would end up like this. Baisu was doing this for Bai Mei. He hated his little Luo, even when he knew that Lil Luo was in danger. She even hid everything from him. Yes, Baisu is too much. Yi Qingluo pinched his face, putting on a fiendish look. So, this can totally offset the fact that she thinks that I hate Bai Mei for not saving her. Mo Xian was slightly stunned. Lil Luo. His hand, from her waist, held both of her hands. Yi Qingluo gave a snort as she maintained her fierce look. This time it has already been cancelled out. If there's a next time and she still wants to use Bai Mei's death to bicker in front of me, I want you to make a choice out of two, do you hear me? Mo Xian's eyes turned cold when he mentioned Baisu. At this moment, it had transformed into a layer of warmth. His obsidian-like peach blossom eyes were exceptionally gentle. He raised his hand and stroked the young girl's hair, gently tucking it to her ear. Lil Luo his Lil Luo, really made him unable to extricate himself from loving her. The so-called complaint, the so-called fierceness, they were just doing it on purpose to give Baisu a way out. Yi Qingluo had never really wanted Mo Xian to stand up for her and do something to Baisu. She just used this way. She wanted to resolve the grudge between her and Baisu. If Baisu was still clear-headed, she would know what to choose. Yi Qingluo threw herself into his arms. All right, this matter, let's end it like this, but I've made it clear, there's no next time. Mo Xian held her waist tightly. Outside the window, a ghost-like shadow floated lightly, like a kite with a broken string. It swayed unsteadily, unable to find its way. The illusory shadow seemed like it was about to be blown away by the wind. All of a sudden, a slender figure appeared behind the shadow. That person sneered. His eyes under the black robe revealed a hint of coldness. Do you regret it? Do you regret getting yourself into such a situation? The shadow did not turn around. He just stood there quietly. He looked in the direction of the ancestral hall as his thoughts drifted. That person continued to sneer. She is such a person. To outsiders, she is cold and ruthless, decisive in killing. But once it involves the people she cares about, she is kinder than anyone else. You hurt her like this, but she still forgave you and even found an excuse to stop the overlord from taking action against you. You can say that she has put in a lot of effort. Shut up. That illusory shadow's delicate body swayed. She raised her head slightly, her face was cold. You palace of darkness. Don't think that I don't know that the direct cause of my sister's death is all because of you. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-27. That person looked at the shadow indifferently, his face filled with hatred. He scoffed lightly. You should be the clearest about why Bai Mei died. Yi Qingluo not saving her is within reason, so you have no right to blame her. Baisu stared unblinkingly at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace who was clad in a black robe and surrounded by black qi, as she suddenly sneered. Are you speaking up for Yi Qingluo? Do I need to speak up for her? The man sneered. You heard what she said to Dizun just now. You know what kind of person she is. Baisu pursed her lips tightly. Her smoke-like shadow was so dim that it almost melted into the air. After a long while, she then looked coldly at the palace master of Gloomy Palace and gritted her teeth. Don't let me run into you. Otherwise, I won't let a single one of you off. As soon as he finished speaking, her body had already turned into a puff of white smoke, completely disappearing in front of the palace master of secluded darkness palace. Yi Qingluo and Mo Xian cuddled for a while. With great difficulty, she managed to suppress Mo Xian's thoughts of parting ways with Baisu. The two of them walked out of the room. Xiaochen looked at the familiar scene in the Bone residence. It was somewhat similar to the scene in the savage Bloodbone monarch's memory, yet it was also different. She was still in a daze. until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. Only then did she regain her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian asked as he pulled her towards the main hall. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered. I'm thinking about the blood-bone barbaric king. I'm sleepy. Typing is a little slow. I have to repeat 500 words. I'll edit it in 10 minutes, moi. That person looked at the shadow indifferently, his face filled with hatred. He scoffed lightly. You should be the clearest about why Bai Mei died. Yi Qingluo not saving her is within reason, so you have no right to blame her. Bai Su stared unblinkingly at the palace lord of secluded darkness palace who was clad in a black robe and surrounded by black qi, as she suddenly sneered. Are you speaking up for Yi Qingluo? Do I need to speak up for her? The man sneered. You heard what she said to Dizun just now. You know what kind of person she is. Bai Su pursed her lips tightly. Her smoke-like shadow was so dim that it almost melted into the air. After a long while, she then looked coldly at the palace master of Gloomy Palace and gritted her teeth. Don't let me run into you. Otherwise, I won't let a single one of you off. As soon as he finished speaking, her body had already turned into a puff of white smoke, completely disappearing in front of the palace master of secluded darkness palace. Yi Qingluo and Dmo Xian cuddled for a while. With great difficulty, she managed to suppress Dmo Xian's thoughts of parting ways with Bai Su. The two of them walked out of the room. Xiaochen looked at the familiar scene in the Bone residence. It was somewhat similar to the scene in the savage Bloodbone monarch's memory, yet it was also different. She was still in a daze, until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. Only then did she regain her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian pulled her towards the main hall as he asked. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered. Thinking about the savage Bloodbone monarch. Until Dmo Xian wrapped his arms around her waist and asked her gently. She then regained her senses. What are you thinking about? Dmo Xian pulled her towards the main hall as he asked. Yi Qingluo's eyelashes fluttered. Thinking about the savage Bloodbone monarch. Chapter 45-28. A trace of helplessness and pampering flashed past Dmo Xian's eyes as he tapped her forehead. I've actually been coaxed out by you. Yi Qingluo pinched his face. No choice, who asked me to be so smart? She smiled and leaned her head against his chest. A faint smile appeared in his eyes. Hurrah Xian. It was really cute. She knew. In actual fact, Dmo Xian was not because she had coaxed the information out of him. It was just that he did not intend to hide it from her. He understood her. He knew that she already knew most of the things that had happened. Even if he didn't admit it. Basically, she could confirm her guess. He pretended to be tricked into answering. He was only cooperating with her on purpose, helping her confirm the guess in her heart. She lazily leaned into Dmo Xian's embrace, her legs climbing towards the man's tall and straight body. I don't want to go anymore, hug me. Dmo Xian hooked his arm around the young lady's body as she wriggled around him, holding her firmly in his arms. Yi Qingluo squinted her eyes comfortably, like a contented kitten. Dmo Xian carried her and strode towards the direction of the hall. Ah Xian, how much do you know? Yi Qingluo's eyes were still closed and her voice was very soft. Dmo Xian lowered his head and looked at the young lady's exquisite face as his pupils deepened. More than you. What do you want to know? What I can be sure of now is that I am the child that the Divine Emperor gave birth to back then. That baby back then was me. She paused, opened her eyes and looked at the man. The time when the Divine Emperor passed away was 10,000 years ago. When I entered the barbaric Bloodbone King's memories, it was also 10,000 years ago. At that time there was no Three Springs sect, and there were no so-called four major sections. Then, why would I appear in the Three Springs sect 10,000 years later? It didn't make sense at all. After she inherited this body, it had also fused with all the memories. She knew it clearly. He had grown up in the Three Springs sect. She couldn't understand the problem of time. In particular, the events of the past were obviously very complicated. It was only through the memories of the barbaric Bloodbone King She still couldn't figure out the real reason behind it. I don't know the answer to your question. Demo Xian sighed softly. Initially, after confirming your relationship with the Divine Emperor, I had also guessed this reason. I think that since you haven't seen the real reason in the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory space, it means that the barbaric Bloodbone King himself doesn't know. Yi Qingluo nodded her head. The Bloodbone Barbarian King was sealed in the black hole of the Nirvana realm by Feng Ge. It was also the place where the Bloodbone Barbarian King later built the Linglong Palace. The child was also handed over to the hidden guard of the Bone residence. What happened after that? He really didn't know. After knowing your biological mother's identity, you still want to look for her? Demo Xian's deep eyes faintly rippled with a faint light. Yi Qingluo's hand caressed his cheek. Don't you want me to investigate my own background? Demo Xian paused for a moment and shook his head. It's not that I don't want to, I'm worried. The Divine Emperor's Emperor. The God Realm's Emperor, such a high and mighty position indeed makes one worry. Yi Qingluo's lips curled into a faint smile, but her words were filled with laziness. She slightly straightened her body in Demo Xian's arms and used both her hands to hold his face. But you are also very clear that even if I don't want to investigate, there will always be someone who will find me. Demo Xian's eyes faintly surfaced a layer of extremely faint danger. Hurry up and read the latest updates. Chapter 45-29. Yi Qingluo's slender jade-like hand gently covered his eyes. Even if you're around, those people who are eyeing me covetously are still eyeing me covetously. Demo Xian grasped her wrist. His eyes, which were as deep as obsidian, stared unblinkingly at her face. He said firmly, I won't let those people hurt you. Yi Qingluo's brows curved slightly. I know. She looped her arms around Demo Xian's neck once again, and buried her entire body into the crook of his neck. Ah Xian, regarding my parentage, I will definitely investigate. I must investigate clearly what happened in the past. Saying that, she raised her head again, her eyes sparkling, revealing a confident look. I promise you in this process, I will do my best, not to let myself get hurt, and not to do anything that will make you worry. Perhaps it was the young lady's gaze was too sincere. Or perhaps it was the young lady's words was too firm. Demo Xian looked at the young lady in front of him, his stern expression, finally slowly softened. He sighed. The gaze which looked at Yi Qingluo became increasingly tender and affectionate. Following that, he stretched out his arm to encircle the young lady's petite body, pressing her heavily into his arms. Come on, what you said, these words of yours have no credibility at all. Demo Xian turned his head, his dark red thin lips reflected a kiss on the young lady's delicate skin. You're always accompanied by danger and uncertain factors. To say that you don't cause trouble, it's impossible. The warm breath, the man's gentle magnetic, mellow voice, mellow like fine wine. It made Yi Qingluo's heart melted by half. I know you've been unwilling to say, because my ability is not enough to know all these, even if I know, it's something that I can't do anything about. The smile on the corners of her lips deepened. Narrow long eyes deeply gazed at Demo Xian's face. But now, Ah Xian, I am very clear what I'm doing. I know myself because of this decision. What kind of situation will I face? I want to take a gamble. I want to bet on myself. I can. The young lady sentence after sentence, sonorous and forceful words. One had no choice but to believe in her determination. Demo Xian's hands suddenly exerted force. The girl's delicate body was lifted up by his hands. He opened his mouth and bit down on the girl's pink lips. I will never refute your decision. As their lips and teeth intertwined, the man's low and hoarse voice came. No matter what you want to do, I will accompany you. The man's rich sandalwood scent invaded her body and mind. The girl's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled, until the man let go of her. Only then did she say with a smile, I know. It's because I have a strong backing like you that I can move forward fearlessly. You are my greatest motivation. Demo Xian tightened his grip. His forehead pressed against hers. The tips of their noses were touching. Their breaths were tangled together. As he listened to the girl's gentle words, the lines on his face became increasingly gentle. It's my honor to be able to support you. When the two of them arrived at the hall, it was already half an hour later. In the hall, there was a large circle of people. One by one, they wandered around the hall, poking and poking at each other. Apparently they had waited for a long time. They heard footsteps. Everyone looked over at the same time. They saw the two of them who looked like conjoined twins. Yan Shaoyi raised her hand and covered her eyes. Let us off. The moment we're conjoined, you're already showing off your affection. Chapter 45-30. Yi Qingluo nestled in Dmo Xian's arms as she lazily tilted her head and looked at Yan Shaoyi. At this moment, shouldn't you be expressing concern for me? Yan Shaoyi took a look at Dmo Xian, who was walking over slowly. There was not the slightest trace of emotion on the man's cold face. She shrunk her neck and replied softly, I can tell that you're fine just by looking at the overlord. What are you worried about? If Yi Qingluo's body had any discomfort, how could Dmo Xian be as calm as he was now? Dmo Xian carried Yi Qingluo onto a chair and sat beside her. Soon after, Gu Yun served up a filling meal. Dmo Xian stood by the side and brought it to her lips. Yi Qingluo opened her mouth and ate a mouthful. She squinted her eyes in happiness. Everyone. They really shouldn't have chosen to meet Yi Qingluo on the day she woke up. This day obviously belonged to the venerable sovereign alone. Yi Qingluo ate a few mouthfuls and her stomach was no longer empty. Her body had also warmed up, and that was when she thought of them with great benevolence. Oh right. How have you been these few days? Did the people from the outside forces, or the Palace of Darkness, do anything? The few of them rolled their eyes. But he still answered Yi Qingluo's question. In the past few days, there had been a lot of activity outside. However, this commotion was not because they had attacked the Gu residence. It was because of the Wind Cloud list. The Wind Cloud list had been held. Most of the factions that were watching the Gu residence shifted their attention to the honor roll. Only a small portion of people remained to guard the Gu residence. And this movement, it was because of the Palace of Darkness. The Wind Fame list this time round could be said to be extremely dangerous. Most people were seriously trying to use the Excellence list to climb to the top. A small number of people had already joined the Ren family's camp. In the second round of the Wind Cloud list, just as the people of the major forces were exhausted from the duel, a figure suddenly appeared. The people of the Ren clan in the arena took advantage of the break to attack the forces around them. By the time the other forces reacted, at least 100 elite profound practitioners had died. Instantly, it caused countless backlash. All the major forces joined forces to demand an explanation from the Ren family. The horses of the Ren family descended from the sky. They started killing right away. Then the Wind Cloud list had become a slaughterhouse. Only those who submitted to the Ren family could survive. After such a big thing happened, everyone knew that there was a venerable emperor overseeing the Bone Mansion. Naturally, not many people continued to stare. After listening to their conversation, Yi Qingluo raised her brows in astonishment. Ren Jianying is so impatient? They're fighting in the second round. Maybe he's worried about you. Gu Zixi began to analyze the situation. Ren Jianying could have easily obtained the inheritance rights of the Ren family from second young Master Ren's hands. Moreover, she could have done so in a dignified manner that no one could find any fault with her. However, because second young Master Ren chose you as his backing and Ren Jianying was afraid of you, she didn't dare to make a move against him. So, that's true. After all, she's a lady, and if she wants to inherit the Ren family legitimately, even if it's coercion and bribery, there would still be people who are not convinced. Yi Qingluo lazily took another mouthful of the thing that Dmo Xian had sent to her lips. After swallowing, he continued, then according to the current situation, Ren Jianying has already controlled most of the forces in the Heaven Realm. Yes. Tong Ziqing fished out a piece of map from her bosom and threw it to Yi Qingluo. This is the distribution of forces that the group leader had secretly observed the current situation in the heaven realm. You can take a look. Chapter 45-31. Yiqing Luo took the map. Spread out on the table in front of him. The map above was very detailed. Every single faction was clearly marked. He also marked the forces that had submitted to the Ren family. Yiqing Luo leaned into Dmo Xian's arms and looked through the entire map before putting it down. In that case, Ren Jianying has already cooperated with the royal family, and both of them are preparing to split the Heaven Realm's territory equally? Tong Ziqing shook her head. I can't tell what Ren Jianying's real motive is based on the current information. Yiqing Luo pointed to a direction on the map. Ren Jianying's ambition is not just to divide the world equally. What she wants should be the control of the entire Heaven Realm. She is planning to wait for the Heaven Realm to completely stabilize, and then counterattack the imperial family? Hearing this, Gu Zixi expression was somewhat complicated. Yiqing Luo nodded her head. On one hand, she's working with the royal family. On the other hand, she's working with the Palace of Gloomy Darkness, so naturally she wouldn't easily give up half of the country to the royal family. She paused and said, the royal family has the same idea as Ren Jianying. On the surface, they maintained a cooperative relationship. Behind the scenes, they were contending against each other. He was waiting. Let's see who takes the wrong step first. Once he took the wrong path, it would be a complete loss. Gu Zixi pursed her lips and looked at Huang Fusheng worriedly. The Heaven Realm is now divided into two factions. What will happen to the four great families? The only way for the four heavenly families is to band together. Yiqing Luo took a look at Huang Fusheng and then looked at Xiao Jin. They will form a group and then split the world with the other two families. But looking at the relationship between the four great heavenly realms, I'm afraid it will be hard to form a group. After all, the four heavenly families had always been in a state of smiling on the surface, but cursing in their hearts. Let them stick together. Therefore, they needed a leader. All the aristocratic families felt that the leader should be one of them. Therefore, it was impossible for them to live in peace. After Yiqing Luo finished her words, she looked at Xiao Jin and Huang Fusheng's slightly changed expressions and her lips curled as she continued. But, based on Huangfu family's current situation, there's a high possibility that they will choose to rely on the Ren family or the royal family. She paused. As for old man Huangfu, if he's willing, he can first hide in the Gu residence. On the surface, Huang Fusheng and Xiao Jin didn't seem to care about the Huangfu clan. However, deep in their hearts, they didn't want the Huangfu clan to be destroyed just like that. What they hated the most was the current clan head of the Huangfu clan and his people, not the Huangfu clan. Yiqing Luo folded the map once again and immediately stood up. She walked towards Tong Ziqing and returned the map to her. No matter what happens to the Huangfu family in the future, as long as your Huangfu bloodline still exists, it's not impossible to rebuild the Huangfu family. Huang Fusheng and Xiao Jin's pupils instantly constricted. Their faces were filled with complicated emotions. After the Ren family stabilizes the current situation, the next one will be our Gu mansion. So let's make the best use of our time and rest well. Yiqing Luo returned to Dmo Xian's side and stretched out her hand. I suddenly recalled that there's an extremely important matter waiting for me to settle. Dmo Xian held her hand and stood up. His hands naturally circled around her slender waist. They were still a little confused. Yiqing Luo had already pulled Dmo Xian out of the main hall. Looking at Yiqing Luo's figure completely disappearing before their eyes, Gu Zixi sighed as she half squatted in front of Huang Fusheng and held his hands. What Luo said is right. As long as you and Xiao Jin are around, rebuilding the Huangfu family is not a problem. Update complete. Mwax. End of this chapter. Chapter 45-32. Huang Fusheng raised his head in a daze, his eyes staring deeply at Gu Zixi. In his eyes, there was hesitation and helplessness. He was also unable to sort out his thoughts at this moment. He held Gu Zixi's hand and held it tightly. It was as if only by holding her could he feel her by his side. Guzishi slowly approached him. Soon after, she stood up and hugged his head. Pressing it into her embrace, she gently soothed his emotions. Towards Huang Fusheng, she who grew up with him, was naturally clear about it. She was very clear about Huang Fusheng's thoughts at this moment. All she could do was to stay by Huang Fusheng's side and give him warmth. On the other side, Yan Shaoyi used her elbow to nudge Qiao Jin. Did you hear that? As long as you are with that kid, it's possible to rebuild the Huangfu family. If the Huangfu family is destroyed, then so be it. Isn't it better to take this opportunity to reshuffle the cards? Qiao Jin raised his hand and held Yan Shaoyi's arm. With a little force, he pulled her into his embrace. That ordinary and mediocre face made it shine even brighter, like colored glass, deep and seductive. Yan Shaoyi stretched out her hand and pinched his face fiercely. The touch of her skin was extremely real. Don't think that you can use your face to divert my attention. The more you act like this, the more it means that you care about the Huangfu family. Yan Shaoyi said. Qiao Jin hooked his arm around the woman's neck and bent down to bite her lips. That pair of glazed black eyes shone with an even more enchanting luster, glistening brightly. I have left the Huangfu family since I was young. What happens to the Huangfu family is not important to me. He replied in a low voice, without much emotion. Yan Shaoyi laughed coldly. I know better than anyone what you are thinking in your heart. She pinched Qiao Jin's face harshly. Only when a red mark appeared on Qiao Jin's face did she let go. Her fingertips lightly touched the red mark on Qiao Jin's face, and she curled her lips with a cold smile. This face of yours is really realistic. Qiao Jin's large palm covered Yan Shaoyi's hand, completely enveloping her small hand in his palm. He pulled her into his arms and hugged her tightly. He didn't want the person in his arms to see his current expression. Yan Shaoyi buried herself in his embrace and wrapped her arms around his waist. She softened her tone. You know very well that the Huangfu clan has lost its purpose of existence and has become a capital to show off. Didn't Qing Luo say it already? As long as old Master Huangfu is willing, he can stay in the Gu residence, and after the matter has ended, we will reform the Huangfu family, a new Huangfu family that belongs to us. Qiao Jin did not speak again, but his hands were wrapped around Yan Shaoyi's. He exerted more strength and pressed her tightly in his arms. After Yi Qingluo pulled Dmo Xian out of the main hall, she rushed towards another courtyard. Dmo Xian pulled her. Are you going to look for Ren Jianming? I promised him that I would help him save someone. Yi Qingluo slapped her forehead. It was in order to save that person that I went to the Gu residence's warehouse and discovered the secret in the ancestral hall. She had been unconscious for a few days in the barbaric Bloodbone King's memory space. Ren Jianming would probably go crazy from anxiety, right? Dmo Xian replied. On the second day after you went missing, he left. Yi Qingluo. Ah. Left. He dragged a crippled body and left the Gu residence? Did he want to be captured back by Ren Jianming, to present his head to her? Or did he want Gong Xiazhu to capture him back to be the prince consort? End of this chapter. Chapter 45-33. As though he had seen through Yi Qingluo's thoughts. Dmo Xian's slender fingers poked her head. I know, I will definitely do what I promised others. Yi Qingluo's eyes lit up. She grabbed his big palm with both hands. A pair of long and narrow eyes blinked. His face was filled with obvious joy. You helped him? Looking at the expression on the young lady's face, Dmo Xian raised his brows. He did not speak. He touched his thin lips with his hand. The way his fingers caressed his thin lips. He was so handsome that people couldn't close their legs. Yi Qingluo decisively hooked her arms around the man's neck and pressed her pink lips against his, planting a kiss on his lips. Then she gazed deeply at him with her big, wet eyes. After being kissed by the girl, the man was satisfied. Xiao Jie will follow him, he will be fine. Yi Qingluo bounced and jumped into the man's arms. Her forelimbs were all wrapped around Dmo Xian. She hung all her weight on the man's body. Xian treats me the best. I like Xian the most. The young lady's sweet words were like a ray of sunshine, seeping into Moxian's heart. That pair of bright and mischievous eyes shone into the depths of his eyes at close range. Her heart was filled with tenderness. Everything he did was to make little Luo happy. Lil Luo was happy. He was satisfied. Let's go, let's hurry and settle Ren Jianming's matter then. We'll go find trouble with the Ren family. Yiqing Luo climbed down from his body. Moxian rubbed her little head. Then he summoned Little Nine. Little Nine brought the two people in the direction that Ren Jianming was currently at. Even with Little Nine's speed, he had still rushed for at least half an hour in midair. It looked even more remote and gloomy, like a patch of green plants that grew naturally and one couldn't tell what it was. No matter how one looked at it, it was extremely strange. Yiqing Luo looked at the environment below as she ridiculed in her heart. Can't that fellow Ren Jianming just stay in the Gu residence properly? He has only been missing for a few days. Is there a need to be so anxious? One person, without any profound energy, and he even ran into such a deep mountain forest. Wasn't he afraid that a magical beast would suddenly appear and swallow him? This should be the place where the person he wanted to save is at. Moxian's head rested lightly on Yiqing Luo's shoulder as he spoke in a low voice. He closed his eyes. His peerless face was like a painting. When he opened his mouth, his warm breath was still beside her ear. For Ren Jianming, the disappearance is equivalent to the destruction of his hope. Perhaps he thought that his disappearance meant that he refused to save that person. That's why he came here alone. Yiqing Luo. He's an idiot, right? This was a statement, not a question. Ren Jianming might really be a fool. Haunted her for so long. He didn't even want face anymore. After much effort, she finally agreed. Did he just give up? There must be something wrong with this child's brain. Little Nine stopped in the depths of the forest. Moxian carried Yiqing Luo down and stood on the ground. As far as the eye could see, everything in front of him was green. The green was strange. Little Nine said that Ren Jianming stopped here. Moxian held Yiqing Luo's hand as they walked towards the front. Trees after trees flashed past in front of them. Moxian brought her and went around several rounds. All of a sudden, the scene in front of him turned into a huge cave in an instant. Just like when she was in Barbaric Bloodbone King's memory space, changing the scenery. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.